Welcome to DAX Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of DAX Machina. I'm here tonight with my partners in crime, Steve Wildman Monrotis and Robbie Rip Rains. Doc is out on a date tonight with his lovely other half, and Anthony is taking care of some personal business. So it'll just be the three of us tonight. Noah was going to join us, but decided to ditch me at the last minute because he wanted to go hang out with his buddies. So. Yeah, I see how it is. You'd rather hang out with his friends and his old man. I see how it is.
How rude.
How rude.
Parents.
That's
how
right.
Rude.
Daniel Hoyle says, hey guys, happy birthday, DA. It's in a few days. June 1st, actually. This coming Thursday will be my birthday. But thank you anyway. Appreciate it. We're going to be talking about the Am Fear Liath Mór, the gray man of the Cairngorms, the gray man of Ben MacDhui Mountain, which is a really interesting story. Boys, how you guys doing tonight? It's Lanjama, by the way.
Hanging up.
Called.
Clearly, I am too sober to pronounce that word. What's the name of the monster again?
It's called Am Fear Liath Mór.
Am Fear Liath Mór. Okay. And what does it translate? It's gray man?
The gray man, basically, yeah. The gray man of the Cairngorm Mountains, the gray man of Ben MacDhui. Ben MacDhui, not Ben MacDhui.
The second highest mountain in Scotland was right on that DA.
Yep. And it's almost perpetually shrouded in mist. Being part of the Scottish Highlands, it's foggy there a lot. But this mountain is almost completely shrouded in mist all the time, and as a result, very few people have actually seen the top of it.
That's cool. That's a creep factor right there.
Yeah, it's weird things happen in the fog. I don't know if you guys have ever done much walking at night in the fog, but when I was working security down at Silver Dollar City, it would get foggy down there, fog rolling in off the lake all the time, and walking around that empty amusement park at night by yourself. Swear to God, you could hear footsteps echoing as you're walking. And it was probably just a trick of the sound, probably my own footsteps echoing back to me, but it just felt so weird.
Oh yeah, the sound travels differently in the fog, that higher air density.
Or whatever was down in that cave system, come up there to say, hey.
Could very well have been.
Yeah, the place you're never supposed to go.
Yeah, never go down in the cave after dark. I don't care what you hear. Don't go down there.
Well, I thought I was familiar with all the Bigfoot-esque creatures. I'd never heard of this one.
I hadn't either, Steve. I was right there with you. I didn't know Scotland had a Bigfoot. But
Chris, I accidentally deleted that email. Can you send me another email? I had to wait to send patches out until I got some more in stock. I was almost completely out. So send me another email, and I'll get back with you on that. I accidentally deleted that email and lost it. Trying to catch up, see if there's... Pork and Bean says, my ex is always surrounded by mist. Bad thing. It's not mist. Stay upwind if you know what's good for you.
Oh, no.
Pork and Beans is trying to put Northwoods out of business.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that's the first shots fired tonight.
Shots fired.
Ryan from Monster Radio says, the Am Fear Liath, one of my favorites. Ryan, if you want to jump in and join us, I'll send you a link, brother. Just let me know. Shoot me a message on Facebook if you want to jump in and join us. We're short-handed tonight anyway, so we would love to have you.
That, and the only knowledge I have of it is, what I heard just before the show. So,
but
yeah.
So this is actually, because we've talked about that before, how a lot of over in the UK, Great Britain, things like that a lot of the things that we would call Bigfoot or Sasquatch over here, they would call trolls and things like that over there. Is this an actual Bigfoot, or is this?
I think it is. I think it is the Scottish Bigfoot. But descriptions that people have seen it range anywhere from 8 to 30 feet tall.
Oh hell!
That's a big youngin, as Doc would say.
The biggest being 30 feet tall. Now, granted, I think if something big and hairy stumbled up after me out in the fog, I'm probably going to add 3 feet to its height just on the fact that it scared the crap out of me. But 30 feet, that's a big critter.
Yeah,
that's a whole different kind of critter, as Doc says. Well, it makes sense that it could be a Bigfoot creature there. I mean, if we assume that all the other Bigfoot creatures that we talk about exist, the Himalayas have their Yeti. The Cascades has got Sasquatch. I mean, the Highlands aren't that different from either of those places.
Well, there have been Sasquatch-type creatures reported on every continent except Antarctica. And Antarctica is so lightly explored, there might even be Bigfoot-type creatures there. But,
there hasn't been much of any kind of wildlife reported on Antarctica, just like you said.
It's so little of it has been explored.
Mm-hmm.
And it's off limits. I mean, it's not like we can put together a GoFundMe and come up with the money and go, we're taking an expedition down to Antarctica. They'd be like, well, no, you're not.
Yeah, it's protected by international law. I'm holding out for Lovecraft's penguins, honestly. The giant penguins.
There you go.
Penguins with octopus tentacles. And there's a thought for one of you. Instead of sharktopus.
Yeah, North Alabama Cryptid says, DA, look in the Guinness Book of World Record and Bigfoot is in there as tallest giant. Huh, I did not know that. I will definitely be looking that up.
Really?
Somebody asked something. Richard Cox says, "Hi lads, the beastie's a Highlander with a deer hide kilt."
Here's one. I get it to. Well, did it work? No, I guess it didn't.
Miss Lanita asked if I could slow the chat down. I will try. I don't know that that's something I know how to do.
See, I like this one.
Yeah. There is.
Bastard! I kicked it back.
Miss Lanita, I don't know how to slow the chat down. I wish Noah was here. He's my tech guy.
That'd be a Noah thing.
Yeah, that would definitely be a Noah thing. I don't know how to slow the chat down.
So it's going 90-0, and I'm, that I guess it's a good problem to have. It means that we've got an active audience.
Yeah, we got 117 already, and we've only been in under 9 minutes. Yeah. So apparently, the Scottish Bigfoot was a pretty powerful, pretty popular topic.
The basic description, and this comes from cryptids.fandom.com, and it's the Cryptid Wiki. It says the gray man is reported to be a very tall humanoid, at least 8 feet high, although sometimes as high as 30 feet. It's covered in short gray hair, hence the name. Many times the witnesses didn't even see it, but still could hear it due to the loud footsteps. Many believe the gray man is a relative to the Bigfoot or Sasquatch. It normally stalks its victims until they realize that it was following them, and then it chases them. This is a common pattern. It walks on 2 legs and walks and runs like a normal person. But more frequently, the gray man is encountered in physical sensation, but without a true physical form. Sensations of this type include vast dark blurs which obscure the sky, strange crunching noises, echoing footsteps which pursue the listener, an icy feeling in the surrounding atmosphere, as well as a physical feeling of a cold grip on or brush against the observer's flesh. There's also a high-pitched humming sound, or the singing as it is sometimes called, which is associated with Ben MacDhui and the gray man. Additionally, the gray man has extremely powerful psychic effect. Visitors to Ben MacDhui report feeling of overwhelming negative energy. Occasionally, this is described as an extreme lethargy or despondency. More often, it is typified by acute fear, apprehension, and an overwhelming panic, leading to suicidal thoughts or physical flight from the area. Generally, this fear is accompanied by the physical sound of echoing footsteps chasing the observer, and sometimes the sound of a resonant yet completely incomprehensible voice, which seems to be faintly speaking Gaelic, a language that's faintly reminiscent of Gaelic.
Wow. Well, when you were talking about the clear but unrecognizable or incomprehensible speech, I figured, well, that's just Scottish, but that's a scary description. I don't think I like this one.
T. Willis says some scientists say that the sightings in the Cairngorms are an atmospheric anomaly, and that large carnivores, omnivores couldn't survive in the area. It's funny, but every time we say something can't survive in this area, nature tends to prove us wrong. So I wouldn't rule out the possibility of this being being a Bigfoot type creature, just because experts say this couldn't happen or this couldn't happen. Experts are proven wrong almost constantly. And when it comes to Bigfoot type creatures, again, we say it all the time, there really are no experts. There are some people that have a little bit more knowledge than others, but it's anybody's guess. This is all theory work. We're all still trying to learn more about this creature. But I think these effects that they're describing, this despondency, this overwhelming fear, sounds to me like the product of infrasound.
Well, and just to play devil's advocate here, you're dealing with a place in elevation, in dense fog, and rugged terrain with very little to absorb the sound. Even weird wind harmonics could give you some infrasound. I mean, even if we're going to argue that there are no cryptids and there's no critter here, it's all a natural phenomenon. I mean, it could be explained, but it still doesn't quite explain why people are seeing 30-foot critters either.
Hey, Marty.
That's a big animal. I don't care what book you're reading. That's a big animal.
Well, and I'm still not sold on the fact that a lot of the infrasound that people are talking about, I'm still not sold that a lot of that's not caused by, a PNS backlash.
Yeah.
Because if you start looking at a lot of and Steve, you probably know as much about this or more than I do. I learned a lot of it from my defensive tactics instructor course that I went through. When you go get in that fight or flight syndrome and you start having that adrenaline dump, which you in a situation like that and you see something like this, you're going to go into that fight or flight syndrome, and your body's going to dump adrenaline in, prepared to either fight or flight, because you don't know what's going to happen with this thing. And you start looking at a lot of what people describe, the symptoms of this infrasound, a lot of it is the exact same thing that you start getting when you start coming off that adrenaline rush. The hearing loss, the vision loss, the feeling nauseous, all this stuff. That's the exact same thing that starts happening to you when you start coming off, and that parasympathetic nervous backlash starts kicking in. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sold on the fact that that's not what a lot of this is, or at least a good part of it.
Yeah, I got you. Well, yeah, and yeah, you're right there. I mean, when that adrenaline wears off and the complementary hormones kick in to take you out of that, people report things like the shivering shits. The first code I ever worked, where I'm sitting there doing compressions, and my watch is telling me that my pulse is hitting 160, 200, and then afterwards you're sick in the bathroom because all this stuff, you come down off of that stuff.
And, well, and everything that they're describing, when my son was, I want to say he was 2 or 3 years old, we had that. You remember those little things that you stuck under the mattress and tied them up so they couldn't fall off the bed. Mm-hmm. They pinned them between the mattress and the box springs. Well, it wasn't tied real good apparently, and he fell between that one of those things in the bed. Well, it nicked his ear. Small cut, but you know how the ear will bleed. So we heard him hit the ground. We took off in there, cut the light on, and his face is covered with blood. So I immediately picked him up and we started doing everything. And once my wife got everything cleaned off at the time and we knew he was okay, I looked at her and I said, "Here, take him." And she loved to make fun of me about this years on, but that adrenaline had kicked in when I went in and saw him all bloody and I didn't know what was going on. And once we got him taken care of and I knew he was okay, I got physically sick because that adrenaline was wearing off, and I was like, he's okay. So I had to get her to take him so I could go in the bathroom and throw up. And it wasn't because I was sick from the blood. It was just, my body was so jacked up on that adrenaline when I walked in and saw my son covered in blood and didn't know what was going on. And then once I knew he was okay, everything started coming down. I was just like, I was dizzy and nauseous, and I couldn't work my hand. I'd lost that fine motor function and stuff like that. So years later, when I went through that defensive tactics instructor class and I started learning about this stuff, I'm like, hey, that's exactly what happened to me. And now fast forward here, hearing people talk about that, I'm like, that's exactly what that was.
Yeah. When adrenaline wears off, I mean, you can get the shakes, you can get violently sick. I've seen guys pass out.
Adrenaline I definitely felt like I could have passed out that night because I was like, I mean, it just when you are truly in that adrenaline overload from that adrenaline dump, and when your body starts taking care of that, if you've never experienced what that feels like, you can't describe it. I mean, it feels like somebody's turning your body inside out.
Oh, right. Sure. Well, and the level of adrenaline you would have had because this is your own son here. It's not like you were just coming up on some Tom, Dick, or Harry on a call. It would have been legit.
So you put yourself out in the woods, and if you're somebody who doesn't believe in these things, and all of a sudden you see something like that, and it's walking towards you, that's going to put you in that situation. That's going to put your body in that. And then once everything's done and taken over with or whatever, and you go into that PNS backlash.
Yeah, I would definitely have had a butthole puckering experience there. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Steve's right. Same feeling when you're in a chase or a physical altercation. Yeah, exactly the same. I've not quite as bad from some of the car chases I've been in. Like Steve said, it was a little bit different when it was going in and seeing my son, but still you get that same kind of feeling of getting that tunnel vision and kind of DA, you know what I'm talking about when you focusing in on the chase.
Absolutely.
And everything goes.
Yep.
And all you see is that tag of that car or those tail lights. You start losing sight of side streets and other cars and that's when it starts getting dangerous.
Right.
Like it wasn't dangerous in the first place, but
I've had adrenaline dumps after critical incidents where my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't put my own pistol back in the holster. I was just was absolutely about to I couldn't even hang on to stuff.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it passed pretty fast. I've never had it bad enough where I felt like I was going to throw up. But I've had I've got to sit down, give me a drink or something.
Right.
Yep. The first fire that I ever went in and fought on when I was at the fire department was almost as bad as that night with my son. Because if you've never been in a fully involved structure fire, that is an experience.
I've never been in one as a firefighter because I was never a firefighter. But I kicked the door in on one, and helped get a couple of people out of one.
It's a whole.
That was not pleasant.
Yeah, it's a whole different ball game when you're in there and you look around. That's all you see is fire. When you're crawling through a room and you look, the fire's over here on this side, and you look over here on this side, there's no fire, and all of a sudden pictures on the wall are starting to catch fire because it's so hot in the room and contents are going because you've reached that flash point. They ain't much other than bullets flying at your head that'll scare you like that will.
Well, it makes me wonder some of these conditions where people have reported ill effects of what's the word I'm looking for? I just said it a few minutes. Yeah, infrasound. There we go. That was exactly like just drawing a complete blank here. But wonder how many of those could have just been absolute cases of adrenaline, their body reacting to being scared shitless, so to speak.
The more, just about every account that I've heard of somebody describing that's what it sounds like to me. And I'm not taking any away from anybody and saying, if you were out there and you heard one of them things yell at you, that's probably going to put your body in that. Mm-hmm. So you would only think, because you hear this thing roar and all of a sudden you're in it, that's what you're going to think. And so I'm sure there's that correlation between it making a sound and you feeling this way. I just think that's what it is the body going into that PNS backlash is what it's caused, or what is causing it, rather.
Steve Padden says, Robbie Rains, when I'm in those situations, my situational awareness expands and I calm down. That when the situation is happening, I tend to hyper focus, but it's when everything is done, when it's all bleeding off, where I almost go to pieces. And it's not like I'm like passing out or anything. I just that adrenaline, you get the shakes.
The reason though is the same reason that Steve is okay in a situation where he's taking care of somebody, and you and DA and I are okay when we're in a situation because we've trained for it. But somebody standing out in the woods that are not trained to deal with a 10-foot Sasquatch growling at them, they're not going to be hyper focused. They're not, things like. But that's a very good point, and the reason we are able to react and follow through in the situations that we do, whether it be us getting shot at or dealing with a traumatic injury like Steve has to deal with, or any of that kind of stuff, it's because we've trained for it.
Sure.
The more you bleed in practice, or the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in battle. I mean, that's
the old adage. It holds true.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So, but if you've never been face to face with one of these things, I was 12, 13 feet away from one when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to prepare you for that. I don't care how many TV shows you watch that have Andre the Giant dressed up as Bigfoot or whatever. Or hearing Leonard Nimoy talk about him on In Search Of. There's no amount of that you watch on TV at that age that will prepare you for looking face to face that thing for real.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, it's you're on the woods. You finally encounter that. That crunching sound you hear is you missing the clutch as your paradigm shifts.
Basically, yeah.
It's I don't. Yeah, we'll just hit on it. Where do you get Bigfoot training? You just don't.
You don't. Eli Harrison said, I had 2 adrenaline dumps in one day. The next day I was dragging pretty bad, like my body just didn't want to move. Adrenaline takes it out of you. I mean, You've ever had a major adrenaline dump, like the night that Nick and I got hit in the van. I had that massive adrenaline dump when it happened, but when it was done, I was just exhausted.
Well, I mean, it's because your body has to get rid of that somehow, and then you have to be able to recoup from that, and the only way you really can is by resting.
Right.
Your body
exactly.
Little Petties had the same thought I did. They're laughing about Andre the Giant. Try it again. Andre the Giant dressed as Bigfoot. There we go. I'm picturing that I'm the Brute Squad.
Yeah, I am the Brute Squad. Hey, you are the Brute Squad. A little bit more on the sightings of this thing. The most common place that the gray man is on the mountain on Ben MacDhui, but has also been commonly spotted in the forest near Aberdeen, Rothammerchis Forest. References of the wild gray man date all the way back to the 13th century. Since then, many climbers have reported seeing, hearing, or even feeling the gray man. In 1925, a climber by the name of Professor J. Normal Colley reported hearing the gray man. He said that for every 2 or 3 steps he took, he heard one loud crunch. All the while, he was speed walking at a reasonable pace, but the footsteps were coming closer and closer. At last, he couldn't take it anymore, and he took off running. Another encounter with the gray man was reported in the forest near Aberdeen. 3 men were walking and reported seeing a large creature that looked like a man but had an eerie, inhuman face. A couple of weeks later, the gray men showed up and chased their car trying to get in. He chased them a short distance, but went up to about 45 miles an hour.
Holy crap.
Yeah, you're not going to outrun that on foot.
Oh, man. There's not enough scotch to make that encounter palatable.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm going to pass on that one.
This thing isn't furry, then. It's
got short gray hair.
short gray hair. Okay.
Whereas the American tend to be more shaggy.
Gotcha.
Let me find it. I've got some pictures. Where's it at?
So this probably would be more like a wild man, for lack of a better.
Yeah, it's called the gray man or the wild man. Let me find the pictures I took. Well, I downloaded. That's weird. I know I saved pictures.
See, I think it's just we need to add to the list of things that we need to check out when we finally get to do that Scotch tour, DA.
Yeah, well, if I get a chance to go to Scotland and do the Scotch tour, we're going to head up into the Highlands. That's going to happen.
Put me down. I'm in.
Sounds good.
That'd be absolutely amazing.
Scotland and Ireland are two of the places I've always wanted to go visit.
Hang on. I think it's saved in a format that the Melon won't read. Let me resave them as JPEGs. I know because I knew I had them.
Well, it wouldn't be a DAX Machina broadcast if we didn't have a little bit of a technological snafu.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah, I don't think we've had an episode that everything just went.
Yeah, I think something was wrong if everything was just going well. Waiting for the other shoe to drop, basically.
I think we just got called out here.
Uh-oh. What happened?
That we may not make it out of the pubs.
We might not.
I resemble that comment. Thank you.
I do as well.
Hey, it's called a pub crawl for a reason, okay?
This, well, it's badly pixelated, but that's actually the top of Ben MacDhui. That's the best picture I could find of it. It's very rocky, and the top of it is almost always obscured by fog. And
it's like the Cairns.
I wonder if that was the mountain that Rob Roy and his people were on in that movie.
Could have been,
because it was really foggy on that.
Man, I cannot get these things to. It's crazy. I can't. This does things differently. I've got to actually work with those to get the image to the right size. Oh, we had a super chat. Thank you, Robin. Appreciate that. So toward future trips.
This thing's moving too quick.
Funny that
I clicked on it and it was already halfway up the screen. Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much.
There we go.
That's
I got
awesome.
it. There we go.
Best thing we could do is get a crap shot of the gray man.
A really grainy bad shot. Hang on. I think I can do it. Let me go around the circumvent this. I've got an idea. Let me pull up the website where I got them from, and I should be able to just share the screen.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I don't care what people say. You're smarter than you look.
It happens occasionally. Not often, but it does happen.
Want to say DA broke clocks right at least twice a day?
That's a fact.
Yeah. It's like Andre the Giant said there in the Princess Bride, I won't let it go to my head.
I won't let it go to my head. That was a great movie.
It's an amazing movie.
That's it.
Yeah, there you go.
And there's the picture of the top of the mountain.
Yeah, it's still disturbing. What is on
And
top of the mountain? Is there like a
bring it.
structure there?
It looks like a cairn.
Okay.
And for those of you that don't know what a cairn is, it's an above ground stone, basically burial mound. In places where you really can't dig in the ground because it's so rocky like that, they would just cover the bodies with rock, and that's how a lot of primitive burials were made. It's either a cairn or like a way marker. I don't know. It's not really good enough that I can see it.
It looks more like a cairn to me.
Well,
Just
and if
very
it's
well.
a burial
Waymarker
place,
would
that
seem
adds
like
the creep factor.
Waymarker would kind of be more like a, straight up and down. That's kind of long ways like a body would be.
Yeah.
They're definitely. I would say there's probably caves throughout those mountains. Remember the mountains that run through Scotland and Ireland before continental drift were the same mountains that run through Appalachia, the Appalachian Mountains. That was actually all one mountain range at one point. So the rock is very much the same. And so look at the Appalachian Mountains. The Mammoth Cave System, one of the largest known extensive cave systems in the world, runs directly under the Appalachian Mountains. Henry White Jr. says, "What caliber would you use?" I would invest in a 500 nitro. I would say probably a 458 SOCOM or a 50 Beowulf would probably get the job done.
Cowboy's got a question for me and you, DA. I'll let you answer first.
You let me answer first?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I was going to think for a minute, but
if you want,
you go right ahead. I got to think for a second.
As he raises the beer to his mouth.
That's how I think.
The scariest call and if you want to know the type of call that's the scariest, or you want to know the specific scariest call that I've been on myself as just any call, I would say the scariest type of call has got to be any kind of domestic.
I agree with that,
because you just never know what you're gonna get into, what the situation's gonna be. But the scariest call that I've ever been on was probably when I was a detective at Liberty. We got a call from one of the clerks at a little gas station that guy was standing outside on a payphone. And yes, this is back when there were still payphones, so that tells you how long ago it was. That he was out making a phone call, and he had a knife in his hand. Well, as our dispatch gets off the phone with the lady from the gas station, the phone rings again. She picks it up, and it's a mental health counselor from one of the services. Said that she's talking on the phone with one of her clients, and he is at a gas station in Liberty, and he's got a knife, and he wants to go out by suicide by cop. So we knew that was the same call, exact same call. So me and the corporal that was on the road at the time, we take off over there. As soon as we get out, or as soon as we pull up, and both of us step out of the car, he takes off, jumps in his car, takes off. So so all of a sudden we go from stepping out on a guy with a man with a knife to a car chase him about a mile back to his house. We jump out of the car, draw down on him. He comes out from around his car and has got the knife, and he takes one step towards the guy that was on. It's like we were pulled up like this, and the corporal was in this car right here facing dead on to him, and I was kind of beside him right here. So I'd already targeted this when we still carried that Smith & Wesson 5906. If you remember that gun, DA, with that long trigger pull. So I'd already started taking up the slack on trigger when he stepped towards Andy, and I'd already watched the hammer start coming back, and it was in that spot where it was about to fall, and he looked at Andy, he looked at me, and he takes off in the house. So he runs in the house and barricades himself in his house. So now we're in a barricaded situation. We knew he had a young daughter, but we didn't know if she was in school, didn't know if she was in there. So it was like I'm going to use a word that will make Doc proud of me. It was a plethora of different events that we went through from the start of that.
I'm proud of you, Robbie. I'm proud.
They grow up so fast.
I know. I got that one.
Using them $4 words, Doc would be proud.
He would be. I had to use it for him. It was a plethora of different types of calls that we went through, and we eventually ended up getting him out. We broke the window and threw a pepper grenade in there, and then went in and got him out. His daughter wasn't in there, and we got him. Nobody got hurt, but you start off here at the gas station. He takes off, jumps in the car. Then you go to a car chase, whole different type of mentality. Then you go to a standoff with him outside the car, outside his house, and trigger almost falls on him right there. And then he goes in here and barricades himself. So it's a whole. It was just a up and down roller coaster of emotions as to what you're doing and what you're going through. So that to me stands out as one of the probably one of the scariest calls that I've ever went to. That give you enough time to think?
Yeah, it gives me plenty. I think the scariest one that I ever did, every call, it was when I was in the jail. We got a call over the radio for all available officers to come to booking intake. And we get down there, and there's this guy. It looks like he's probably a weightlifter of some sort. He's just massively jacked. And he's probably, I don't know, 6'4", 6'5", probably 300 pounds of muscle. He's ass naked, and he's throwing people around like they're children, just throwing them. Come to find out, the officer that brought him in didn't tell us that he was on bath salts. And so 6 of us dive on this guy. And I at the time, I was in pretty good shape. I was probably 250, but I was pretty solid dude. That was long before the back injury. And he threw me over a desk, just, and he's knocking people around, beating the crap out of us. We all looked like we'd been through hell. 6 of us fought this guy to a standstill, and I got up on one of the desks, jumped on his back, and was trying to choke him out. And he's just swinging me around like a rag doll, and I'm clinging on for dear life. We finally got him down, got him in the cuffs, and we're all bleeding, we're all beat up, and he immediately goes into what do they call it? God dang it! I had it. I had the term in my mouth my head just a second ago. Excited delirium. Immediately goes into excited delirium and flatlines. We had to rush him to the ER. He lived, but excited delirium is no freaking joke. 10 seconds before he was chucking people around like they didn't weigh anything, and he was flatlining a second later. And the dude lived, and turned out it was on bath salts, but he didn't even take them willingly. Somebody had slipped him, and he just lost his freaking mind. And once he came down off of him, nicest guy you could meet, was absolutely apologizing. I can't believe I did that. I'm so sorry. Normally I'm like super respectful of cops. I'm like, hey, I get it, man. I understand that stuff does crazy stuff to people, but the fact of the matter is you hurt a lot of people, not all of them cops.
Right.
I don't know whatever happened to that guy. I don't know if he beat the charges or what. I didn't follow the case, but that one was absolutely terrifying because I'm like I said, I was about 250 at the time. And when I come trucking up, he was like throwing people around, and I had like just the perfect free shot. So I just went running in at a dead run, and I hit that guy at a dead run, hit him in the mouth. And my intention was to knock him down, and then we'd dogpile him, get his cuffs on him. Kind of rocked back like this, and then came back forward and looked at me, and I was like, uh-oh. Whoops. I probably gave him my best Sunday go-to meeting haymaker from hell. I hit him so hard my hand hurt for a week and didn't even phase him.
Yeah. That's not a good situation.
But nicest guy you could meet once everything wore off. At the time, I thought we were fighting the devil himself.
Robbie, it puts some perspective, and we were talking about that 59-06. The first gun I ever bought was the same type of pistol my father-in-law taught me to shoot on. And it was a Smith & Wesson 45-06. Yeah, same design.
Yep, just the 40 caliber version.
Yeah, the 45. Yeah, 45, and so the long trigger pull. You always take up the slack before you got to use it. Just the visual was there.
Yep. Had I had a Glock that day, that guy would have died.
Oh,
the only reason he is still alive, if he's still alive, I don't know if he's still alive now, but the only reason he walked out of there that day in handcuffs is because we didn't have a Glock. If we'd had Glocks at that point,
I pepper sprayed a guy on bath salts one night, and he wasn't wearing glasses. I'll take mine off to demonstrate, but I just lit him up, and he went and kept coming.
Oh,
I was like, "Uh-oh."
yeah.
I
When
also
was
saw a
doing
guy
my
one night grab the taser leads and yank them out.
when I
I've
was
had that
doing
happen too.
my mental health rotation when I was in nursing school, they took us to the adult psych unit over at North, and that was back when bath salts was real big. And I was watching the dude, and he was etching the safety glass with his teeth. He's just standing there. He's like, like zombie style, scraping his teeth on the glass, and he's all bleeding and everything. And then, but he's etching the glass. And of course, I'm sitting there as a fresh, nursing student, just like, oh hell no.
Well, it's like Penny talked about, the dude that zombie attacked the guy in Florida. Bath salt. That if we ever have a zombie apocalypse, it's going to be caused by bath salts.
Probably.
Because I fought a guy on bath salts one time, and I was like you, DA. I was about 250, 260 at the time, and he was 145 pounds soaking wet carrying a brick. And that little joke, when I tased him, he was laying on his stomach, and I was on his back, and I had him, kind of pulled up like this, and he's still rolling around. So I still have him hooked. I reached in and grabbed my taser, stuck my taser, popped the cartridge off and stuck the taser in his side right here and dry stunned him. And that little joker stood up with me on his back from laying flat on his stomach. He stood up when I tased him, stood up with me on his back. I was like, okay, this is going to be a bad day. I fought that joker for 15 minutes.
Drugs
Those
are bad.
are brutal. Drugs are bad, okay?
Okay, don't do drugs.
We're kind of digressing.
Well, we always do.
We answered a question.
That is true. It was a question, so I guess we didn't digress too much.
Yeah, it wasn't like we went off on a tangent just because. I mean, Cowboy asked us a question, we answered it.
Oh.
We were catering to our fans.
There we go.
To our friends, to our family.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to put my head around biologically what this critter would be. It's are we talking like another potential hominid like Bigfoot, or a whole different kind of critter?
Sounds more to me like the wild man stories that you hear from, what was like the 1800s, 1700s, 1800s that you heard from.
all throughout Europe back then. They used to refer to it what they called the wood woes, which was considered a wild man, but they were tended to be covered in hair and 7-8 feet tall. So is that a type of Bigfoot? More than likely. I mean, even Beowulf, that's what they were talking about with Grendel. It was this massive beast covered with hair.
Unfortunately, Penny, I don't have mine with me. My dogs went on vacation with my wife, and I'm alone today.
And if I let
Sadly.
Harley in, it'll take an act of God to get him back out of here again.
And Bucky and Cap are having WrestleMania 25 outside in their spot.
Take it off here.
DA and Steve heard them earlier. They were having a good time.
And if Doc were on Ranger, we'd just lay there and pass gas. So
more than likely.
My wife's family's having a big family reunion, so she took the dogs with her so they could go play on the farm. So.
I was going to say something, completely lost it. Oh, we were talking about being a type of Bigfoot, and I even think those old wild man stories are basically just because they didn't have a name for Bigfoot back then. Of course, the Native Americans did, but the word Bigfoot didn't get coined until 1957, something like that.
Yeah, whenever that logging thing in California by that reporter, he said Bigfoot terrorizing, and it caught on from that one article.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think that was 57 or 58, somewhere around in there.
Yeah,
and the Patterson-Gimlin footage wasn't shot until 67.
Yeah, because it was already called Bigfoot by the time they shot their video.
So I think some of these creatures like the wood woes and the wild man of the woods and stuff like that, I think those were very much Bigfoot type creatures that they just didn't have another name for. And much like the abominable snowman of the Himalayas, I'm not necessarily convinced that Bigfoot actually lives on Ben MacDhui, because there's so little vegetation up there. It's all rock. And it's also seen in a nearby forest near Aberdeen. So I think much like the abominable snowman of the Himalayas, I think it goes up there, but I don't think that's where it lives. I think it lives in that forest, and that's a pretty big forest if you look at it on the map.
Yeah, I mean the Highlands aren't known for their plants. It's pretty inhospitable. Look at look at some of the beauty shots from the first Highlander movie. That was filmed on location. And so it's like the surface of the damn moon.
Daniel Hoyle says, "DA, your Steve Lilly crossovers, how will they fit in on the Steve Lilly timeline?" Steve, Cam and I haven't really discussed that. Obviously, the one with that I already done, the Operation Lily, that one basically is going to fit in before like Steve Lilly 8 or 9. But before he met the fourth member of their group, before he met Isbel Garza. Yeah. And I was just talking to Cam the other day, and I never thought about asking about where the timeline fits in. So, and Cam's doing a couple of where my characters are showing up in the Steve Lilly stories. I've already got a couple other Steve Lilly ones started. Cam and I were on the phone the other day for 45 minutes or so, talking about stories that we're doing and things we're planning. So I'm definitely got more in the works.
It would have to be before he met, or before that other guy that worked with him went on that one in Texas too, because when in Operation Lily, you talked about, he normally works with 2 other people, so that would have only been Hook and Lewis.
Right, that was before Isbel.
Well, no, I'm talking about the other guy, the one that he took when the first time they met, the guy that talked about the Sabe people, whatever, the big fat guy. So there was another guy. It wasn't Isbel in that one. It was another guy.
Right. I can't remember his name.
I can't either, but so it had to have been before that one too, and I can't remember what number that one was.
I want to say that one was 6 or 7,
somewhere around there. But it would have to be before that because, like I said, it only talked about 2 other guys in Operation Lily, and that had to be just Hook and Lewis. So
yeah. Sue Gee says, did anyone hear the report of the woman in Scotland whose car broke down on a remote road? She called the motor club. They arrived to find her car door open. No woman. She was found a mile into, and I don't see the rest of it. Into a field, dead, eaten upon. They said it was badgers who ran her down and killed and ate her. Why would she even get out of the car for badgers? Why would she even get out of the car if a couple of badgers approached?
Well,
I'm guessing she got out of the car and tried to, and something got her out of the car.
I can understand if they got badgers like we got here, but I thought the most of the European badgers were those nice little friendly looking things like they had. That guy, have you heard that guy that does the comedy?
Oh yeah,
where he talks about our badgers will make you a cup of tea, an American badger will rip your face off and
drag you in an alley and shank you for your money.
Yeah, drag you in an alley and shank you for your money.
Badgers? We don't need no stinking badgers. Sorry, we're a little Weird Al popping in there.
Yeah, I can't imagine getting out of a vehicle and running from badgers. I'd stay in the damn car.
Yeah, I wouldn't jump out of the car and run from badgers. Daniel Hoyle says, Robbie, that was
Brian.
I guess Brian in East Texas. Hey, somebody got the reference. Jack Mack says UHF action. Yeah, I ruined my kids, according to my wife. I introduced them to Weird Al when they were really young, and now they're all 3 big Weird Al fans. Mondoc says the wife and I chased a badger once. I've never messed with a badger. I've never actually seen a badger in the wild. I've seen them in zoos and on documentaries, and as many places have I been as I've been out in the woods. I'm shocked I've never actually ran across one in the wild. I found a couple of dens that one of the hiking guides I was with said it was a badger's den, but we never saw the badger.
They'll
Yeah,
mess you up if you give them a chance.
I've
I've heard
seen a
stories.
den complete with the mama. When I was in Scouts, I used to spend a lot of time at the SBRF Scout Ranch there in southeast Missouri, and I was out. We were out on kind of a fairly primitive hike, and I happened to relieve myself near one of the dens, and I heard the sounds, and the mama badger comes out of that den with two young behind her, and I took off as quick as I could go. She was less than pleased that I was
would imagine so.
near her den.
Yeah, I would have been running too.
Yeah.
Sugi says, my theory is she had to pee while waiting for the auto club, rode long wait, and something else came upon her. Yeah, but it doesn't sound like badgers. You just don't hear stories of badgers attacking and killing people. I'm sure they're capable, but you also don't hear about badgers working in conjunction. I mean, I've never heard of a pack of badgers.
That's what I was thinking. They run in
pack
singles,
hunters.
don't they?
Pretty much.
And I can see a badger messing somebody up. But if you're an adult and a badger's coming after you, if you're going to be putting up no fight to let something a third your size kill you, I would be fighting like crazy. And that's if I've got to grab a stick, or of course, it is the UK where you're not allowed to carry firearms. But if one came up after me here, it's going to get 17 plus rounds of hollow points, and then we can argue the point later. Kevin Bode says, when I trapped, I caught one, and the claws were 1.5 inches long. That'll do some damage. Yeah, I'm sure they would. She said, but that lady was dead and had been fed on. Penny says they're solo animals. They're not herds of badgers running amok doing wet work missions. Although that is that would make an interesting story.
I did like the visual though.
Sugi says definitely BS about the badgers. I would agree. I don't think it's badgers at all. I think that was a convenient excuse. Nimza says that's why Australia is safer. There's no badgers there. Yeah, just everything else in Australia wants to kill you.
Oh, you ain't got badgers.
You got all the other shit.
23-foot crocodiles.
And, you got salt and freshwater crocodiles. You've got kangaroos that'll mess you up. Meg Mills says sounds like a dog
snakes in the world.
I don't know if it's a dog man. I have heard of dogman sightings in Scotland. That is definitely a thing. Leon, that comes to it from the channel Do It Noel's Way. He does a lot of dogman research in England and up into Scotland. So there are a lot of dogman sightings. But if this is close to that area near the Cairngorms, I'm still going to bet it's probably some type of Bigfoot creature. These things are known to be predators. We've got lots of Native American accounts of them peacefully interacting. But by the same token, we've got lots of accounts of them coming in and stealing people or attacking people. And let's call it what it is. Missing 411. I think some of those missing 411 cases were people that got placed on the menu.
Like you said, people who took the shot and pissed the wrong thing off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is not even caliber; it's shot placement. You know as well as I do, Robbie. When the crap hits the fan, you aim center mass because you've got to hit what you can hit. It's what you're trained on. It's not like you can when the adrenaline dumps, you can careen a bullet off of a tree and knock the gun out of their hand. That's all Hollywood bull crap.
But you think about it. The Coke bottle. That's what we're trying to shoot at. You're not trying to shoot here or here or up in here. You're trying for that Coke bottle. All right. Which, right in the face, that's a good thing. But still, that the kids now that they're going through the academy, they're not even teaching that. Remember, what I went through, it was shoot till the threat's eliminated.
Exactly.
It's not that way.
The threat.
It is not taught that way anymore. It is 2 center mass. That's it. We were shoot to the threats eliminated. It was 2 to the chest, 1 to the head.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I still drill that way when I go to the range.
But now, and all this, I'm not even gonna say it, but y'all know what I'm saying. Now I'm surprised they're not drawing guns on there and having them shoot at the guns that they're carrying.
Well, and Steve Prodden just made a very good point. You know, the head's a small target, and the head moves independently of the body. You know, so I'm coming towards you, and I'm just happy to do one of these things. You know, it definitely makes the target a little easier to hit.
I agree with you, Jack. I think there's no one single answer to the missing 411. I think it's multiple things that are happening.
Absolutely, Toombs. I know you know what I'm thinking. Just not gonna say it.
We'll behave tonight.
Yeah. Behave yourself.
We'll try anyway.
As good as we get anyway.
Scotland's got a long history of weird creatures, be that from Scottish folklore like the Fae or the Black Shook, or the Gray Men of the Cairngorms. There is a long history of weird sightings. I mean, the Black Shook gave rise to Arthur Conan Doyle's The Hound of the Baskervilles. So there's a long history of really bizarre sightings of creatures up in that area, and a very rich history of folklore up in the Highlands. So the thought of a Bigfoot type creature living up there in those mountains, not a surprising one to me, and it's not something I even consider a big stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Well, I would think
stay off
too
the moors.
The more hostile an environment is, the more hostile the critter's going to have to be to live in that environment. Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see what is out there.
It's like the desert. I mean, that's a hostile environment. You're not going to have, that's why you don't see squirrels in the desert, because they wouldn't be able to survive.
Right.
Although I've seen some pretty mean-ass squirrels, just saying.
Lene wants to know if behaving applies to the mods too, because she said, "Well, you know me."
Well, let's all behave, folks, mods included. So we'll be on our best behavior.
Yeah. If we can't have fun, Lene, you can't have fun either.
The mods have to consider themselves to be employees. Everybody that works here has got to behave themselves.
Sergeant Deacon says, when I went blind in my right eye, I had to retrain myself to shoot left-handed so I can sight with my left eye, but I sometimes still pull up right side when muscle memory kicks in. Exactly. Muscle memory is a hard thing to get rid of, to change. Takes time.
It only takes 100 or so moves to get into muscle memory, but it takes way more than that to get out of it.
Right. Especially if you've been doing something for years. If you've trained with it for years, it's going to take a while to break that muscle memory.
Yeah, see, I didn't know I was left eye. I'm right-handed, but I'm left eye dominant, and I didn't know that until I went through the academy. I'd always just shot, because nobody ever showed me that thumb trick and all that, and I didn't know. And luckily, my instructor was a pretty cool dude, and he knew what he was talking about, so he checked on that, and had he not checked on it, I probably would. I wouldn't have failed because I knew how to shoot. But as it stood, I came within 2 points of taking top trigger home, just because of the stuff he told me.
See, I'm left eye dominant too, and but I'm a right-handed shooter, and so when I took my my pistol class at college, I took like a PE credit and screwing around, and the instructor used to give me crap because I shot with about a 10 o'clock cant. And he's like, why are you shooting like that? I'm like, well, it lines up the sight. And it's like, I've never had somebody shoot like that. I got the high score in the class.
Answer me this then, because I don't know a whole lot of people who are in the same boat as I am. And obviously you are too. Do you shoot any rifle or scope?
Some.
If you do, what do you do? How do you do it?
In order for me to shoot a rifle with a scope, I've got to actually close my left eye to use the sight. I can't get it lined up properly with both eyes open, and so it takes out my peripheral vision. But I do okay with it. But with a pistol, I keep both eyes open, and I've got that cant, so everything's tilted to line up the sight better.
And I used to have to do the same thing. I used to have to close my left eye, and it drove me up the wall because looking through my right eye through a scope, I just felt like everything was gone. So what I started doing is instead of holding my head straight, I turned my head this way and almost put my nose on my wrist. Then I can look through. I can still have a little bit of peripheral vision, but I'm looking at my left eye. So, from straight on, I'd be like, and just almost looking with my right eye almost touching my forearm. Instead of holding my head straight up and looking like this, try that and see if that helps you. Because that way you keep your right eye open. You're still using your left eye. It took me a long time to figure that out, though.
Thank you, Nimza. You are awesome. I was attacked by a duck and need a hug. If it's an Australian duck, it's probably venomous.
And 8 feet tall. It looks like it takes steroids.
Daniel Hoyle says, have you all covered or heard of or covered the Beast of Bladenboro? It's a North Carolina cryptid. Didn't we cover that one once, Robbie?
That sounds familiar. I know we've talked about the little boy in North Carolina. We've talked about
there was the
we've talked about the
lizard man of Scape Swamp.
Yeah, that's South Carolina.
I don't know if we've covered the lizard man, the Beast of Bladenboro.
We talked about Croatoa and we talked about if a cryptid could possibly be part of that, but I don't think we've talked about that.
Yeah, I don't think we've covered that one. Well, we will have to look into doing that one.
Yep. Because I know we talked about when we talked about the boy and the bear and all that stuff. There was something that Marines at Camp Lejeune were seeing. I don't know if that's. I don't know where Bladenboro is. I don't know where that is in relation to. Because I'm not from North Carolina, so I don't. But that
sounds like something for us to look into.
Yeah.
Jaeger71 says there's one about a lady and her family in Bankery, or Banchery. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. They were staying at a holiday vacation home, and she kept seeing a Bigfoot looking in the window and hitting the side of the cabin. That's pretty standard Bigfoot behavior from here in the States too. That they'll smack the side of buildings and look in windows. Jack Max says, did y'all ever talk about the Great Dismal Swamp in Virginia? Yeah, I think probably got to be writing some of these down.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing anything.
Take some notes there, DA.
Let me grab some paper.
The irony is the author is having trouble finding paper.
Well, I've got plenty of paper. I just had to find a blank page. Beast of Bladenboro.
And Dismal Swamp in Virginia.
All right. I got both those written down.
And
outstanding.
Just to answer that, Pure Blood, I tried. I can't shoot. I can shoot left-handed, but I can't consistently shoot left-handed. I still have to shoot right-handed. I've just had to adjust my sight pattern.
D suggested the Anunnaki. I'll look them up too. I know I'm familiar with the story, but not enough to do a show on.
Yeah, Taylor said something to me the other day because she's just now gotten into watching Teen Wolf, the new Teen Wolf, or not new, but the old new Teen Wolf.
Yeah.
And she said that
the
we should,
remake.
yeah, she said we should do something on the Kitsune and all that they had in there. I thought that's more of a spirit than it is a.
Yeah, I try to avoid Japanese folklore.
She's in anime though. She loves it. So
not that that I find it any less believing. I mean, Japanese folklore is just as believable as folklore of any nation. It's just so much Japanese folklore is tied up in anime, and I don't want to get dragged down that road. I mean, yeah, I'm just not into anime at all. Our roulette says the beast of Bladenboro, North Carolina, killed animals for sport. That's definitely something to look into. Miss Naoma's here. Hey, Miss Naoma. She said, I've never understood the whole left-handed, right-handed shooting. I use the hand that isn't attached to the arm that's tired. It's the same with writing. When one hand gets tired, I switch. I'm an ambidextrous shooter. In fact, when we would do qualifications at Greene County, I would bring my own ammo and my other belt, and I would run qualifier with both hands. One of our lieutenants, Tom Canner, he was pretty surprised when I made the transition to shooting left-handed because I wanted to start shooting. I'm left-handed normally, and my left eye is stronger than my right eye. And when I started having to wear bifocals, I went and qualified with my left hand. But I've ran the qualifier with both hands, and I'm a pretty good shot either way. Jaeger 71 says, also in the same area near Aberdeen, a dog man crossed the road in front of a man and his son. They described it as a huge wolf that stood up when it got halfway across the road. Well, if there's dogman sightings near Aberdeen, then very well could have been a dogman that dragged that woman out of her car.
Yep. And big wolf prints are starting to show up a lot.
Speaking of big wolf prints, you want to tell us about that, Robbie?
Yeah, I went to my dad's the other day to show him.
I'm going to see if I can get the picture and pull it up.
And every time I go to my dad's, we go out back and he shows me, the newest piece or newest vehicle or newest. A lot of people call it junk. It's not junk to my dad and I, but he's got this camper that he got from a buddy of his that he's using to store all his old computer equipment. So we're walking up to look at this camper, and y'all know me, I'm tracking his.
God damn! I hate how this thing blows these images up.
Tracking is just ingrained in my head now. So I look down and I see that, and that thing's about 5.5 inches, about 4.5 inches long. It's close to 5 inches. That's a big wolf print. And like I told you, I said, at least I had a tape measure this time. Then I laughed and said, okay, really, my dad had it, but that's not the point. The point is there's a tape measure there.
There you go. That's impressive. It's a big damn dog.
I mean, I don't have the top of that tape directly at that claw mark, but it's not far off. So that thing's at least 4.5 inches. That's big.
That is a big canine print. And that was that was at your dad's place?
Yeah.
Well, have there been any reported wolf sightings in your area?
Not that I've heard. That's why I looked at Dad and I said, "Do you got wolves around here?" He said, "Well, probably coyotes." I said, "Dad,
that ain't no coyote."
I said, "There ain't a coyote I've ever seen that big." I said, "Most the biggest coyote prints I've ever seen would fit in that front pad." He said, "Well, is it a bear?" I said, "No, that's not a bear print, Dad." I said, that's a wolf print. There is no two ways about the Cap, my 100-pound German Shepherd. His paw print is nowhere near that big, and he's got some big feet. I'd say 3, maybe 3.5 is Cap's, and he's a big shepherd.
That's a big boy.
Roulette, that's taken in the western part of South Carolina.
Yep. It's up in the Gem of the Foothills, Pickens County.
Jack
that
Mack
is not a
says
coyote.
2-legged prints or 4.
It was 4 because it was chasing some deer. I mean, I
Toasty
didn't
says
see
that's
it.
not a coyote print, either a wolf or wolf dog hybrid. I would agree. It's too big to be a coyote.
Yeah,
Yotes don't get that big.
no.
Even a coy dog, probably not going to get that big. Most coy
No.
dogs I've seen are at the most 70, 80 pounds.
I was going to say 60 to 80 is what I would.
That was probably a half
figure.
inch to 1 inch in the ground too, imprinted into the ground too.
So this is a good heavy beast. Probably $150, $160
Yeah.
to have a print that deep and
I'd
that
say
big.
it's closing in on 2 bills probably.
Probably.
And you think that's about the same size as that when I showed you that I saw it outside my soccer field in Liberty. I didn't have a tape measure on that one, but I put my size 11.5 boot next to it, and it was pretty good size compared to my boot.
Mm-hmm. Jaeger says you have to remember Scotland is the least populated area of the UK. 91% of us folks that live here, only about 2% of the area, 2% of its land area, and they live in only about 2% of the land. Yeah, there's a lot of wild areas in Scotland. Robert D said, there we go. I was looking for the comment. He said, the one my late uncle showed me was about 2 times the size here in northeast Missouri a few years ago. I know for a fact that there are wolves here in northeast Missouri. There's a buddy of mine that lives up by the Niangua. He's another writer. His name's Eric Testerman, and he sent me trail cam footage of wolves on his property, and that's just down by the Niangua River, not far from here. Sergeant Deacon says my 200-pound Mastiff have big prints. I've had an English Mastiff and a Bull Mastiff, and they both had big prints, but not quite as big as that. JD Smooth says I believe the Cherokee reintroduced wolves in North Carolina along with elk. Northwoods says the DNR here doesn't want to admit the wolves are around here. It's funny that the DNR refuses to admit a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they do kind of. They're kind of like the Department of the Interior's version of the Men in Black.
Yeah. Daniel Hoyle says I have a Rot Wolf hybrid, and his prints aren't that big. That'd be a big animal.
I wouldn't mess with that dog. It's probably a sweetie, but wouldn't mess with him.
Don Donaldson says my Roddy weighs in about $165. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up with the comments. Born Not to Run says I don't think they added wolves in North Carolina. I go backpacking down there and no one talks about it. You know, it still might be one of those cases where nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
For years nobody really talked about wolves in Missouri, and now I'm seeing actual, trail cam footage of, and it's clearly not a coyote.
Right.
Titan says Robbie, had it been raining that day, that print is deep. Robbie, either you're muted or your sound ain't working. I can't hear you, buddy. Don't hear you. You might have to back out and come back in again.
Yeah, I don't think he's muted. I think he's bugged.
Penny Van says that print you showed is Twilight-sized paws. I don't know. I've never seen Twilight, so I'll
ride the wolf into combat. Yeah, the wolves in Twilight, they're when they turn into wolf form, they're 4-legged, but they're about the size of the like Fenrir. They're you could ride them. An adult human could ride them.
There he is.
That worked?
That worked.
Yep, he's back.
I will have to look for that will have to look for those trail cam images. I don't think I saved them on my computer. I know I looked at them. Let me see if I can find them.
But to answer that question, no, it had not rained. It hadn't rained at Dad's house in probably 2 weeks. He said, because we were talking about the rain.
With a deep damn print and very well defined.
Yep. And like I told DA, it was a whole track lineup. There was deer prints, and I even saw a few raccoon prints out there right around that area. But the wolves or however many it was were following the deer. The raccoon was going the opposite direction from the wolf and the deer.
I'm going to try to load one of those pictures that he sent me. If I can get it to load. Pictures work weird on here for some reason. I'm going to have to figure out what I'm doing with the pictures.
Apparently microphones work weird too.
Yeah, apparently. There's some issues we're dealing with.
Because I ain't touching nothing, and all of a sudden it just stops.
Ooh.
Let me get rid of that comment on the screen so I can.
I'll take it off. There you go.
These are good sized animals.
Yeah.
And obviously they're eating pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't look like they're starving, that's for damn sure.
Definitely not. I think that's about the best of the images that I got.
I'm going to try to get some trail cams and put up there at my dad's now that I've seen that and see if I can get some pictures or whatever.
Oh, here's one for you, Robbie. This is a track taken just outside his house in the snow.
Oh.
Unfortunately, there's nothing in it for scale, but Robbie's my track guy.
That's definitely thawed and refroze because that's an abnormal pattern on that, but looks canine.
Let me take it off screen and put up and share it on the share screen because I think you'll see more details. There we go. When it's not blown up as far, you get a little bit more detail.
Yeah, but you can tell it's thawed and refroze on the toes on the right hand side.
Sorry,
toes on the right hand side are kind of joined together a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's definitely canine because it looks like on this toe over here on the far left, you can still see part of the claw where it didn't totally wash it out when it refroze, and it kind of opened up down at the bottom, but it's definitely, without having any scale, it's hard to tell anything about it, but it's definitely canine.
This was something he caught on his trail cam. He didn't know what the hell it is. It looks like an alligator tail. You can see it right there see it right here.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. It does. It looks like a tail of an alligator. This is in the woods in Missouri.
Y'all got any lizard man in Missouri?
No, not that I've ever heard of.
Well, you heard that they recently they found a gator in Lake Wapapello.
Where's Wapapello at?
It is up by St. Louis, I think.
They found one in Taneycomo a couple of years ago too.
This one was just on the shore of the lake. They saw it this weekend.
Nice.
And it was just kind of basking on the shore, and somebody took a picture of it. They're like, "Yep, we're just gonna let him be." Let's see. I think it's near where I grew up, but I've never been out there. Let me see. Lake Wapapello. It's very close to where I grew up. It's a reservoir formed by damming the St. Francis River. Now, St. Francis River runs right just by Farmington where I grew up. The reservoir lies mostly in Wayne County, but extends into Butler County, so it's in the Boot Heel. It's a flood control lake.
It's down in the Boot Heel.
Down that way.
You may have gotten in off the Mississippi then, because gators have been spotted in the Mississippi as far north as St. Louis.
Yeah, so there's where that's the county where the rivers
Well,
or the lake's located.
There's lots of waterways that run that far away from the Mississippi that are connected to it.
Well, I mean, alligators have been found some places because there was one in Laurel and Hardy Lake, which is just up the road from me in Pickens County in the mountains, where
somebody had to release that.
Yeah, but it survived for years because for years people were calling DNR and saying, "Hey, there's an alligator in this lake," and DNR was like, "Whatever, there's no alligators up there. It's too cold for them. They don't." And finally, a Pickens County deputy was riding by, and a lady flagged him down and said, "We've been calling DNR forever about this alligator out here. It's going to hurt somebody before it's over with." He's like, "Ma'am, she said, come here. It's out on the bank right now." And the deputy got out, looked, sure enough, there's a freaking 7-foot alligator sitting on the bank. So he called dispatch on the phone and said, "Call DNR and tell them to get out here now. There is a 7-foot alligator in Laurel and Hardy Lake." And DNR still didn't believe it, even coming from a deputy, until they got out there and saw it. And they finally had to trap the thing to get it out of there. But it was like 7 or 8 years that thing had been running around out there that people were talking about it. Yeah. So
here's the picture of it.
Wow.
It's an American alligator. That one's about, they say it's 6 to 7 feet long. That'll ruin your day at the lake.
Yep.
Also,
they're like,
clear out your well-stocked pond if it gets into it.
The DNR person comes out. I was like, "Well, they're more scared of you than you are of them," and I would call bullshit. But
I don't know how scared he is, but I guarantee you he ain't as scared of me as I am of him.
Well, several years ago, I went to the St. Augustine Alligator Farm, and I paid for a little thing where I got to have an encounter with an alligator. And I've got a picture somewhere of me sitting on the back of a 12-foot American alligator. Now, the only reason I did it is because I saw how well fed they were. And they have a big central pit in like the middle of the place where they feed them. And they have these little frozen, almost like guinea pigs. I don't know what they're like, lemmings or something. They feed the damn things. But like they're so well fed that like they were throwing them like right next to the gators and stuff, and the gators were like, not worth it.
Yeah, it's too much energy to move that far.
Seriously, they're that well fed, and I'm like, okay, well, clearly it's not going to be that interested in my fat ass, but it was still a mildly terrifying experience.
Yeah, I can see how that would definitely be one of those butt puckering moments. I'm not getting on one. I'll pass.
Well, I had to say that I did it. I mean, there's no way in hell I'm going to even approach one in the wild. And so I'm like, this is the time for me to have a close encounter with it. And the funny thing is, it as I'm sitting on it, it's making that low infrasound kind of thing. Everything around is just kind of vibrating. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. Because even the babies will do it. I was holding a little 12, 14-inch baby, and it was just sitting there, infrasonically vibrating. Yeah, nice experience under laboratory conditions, so to speak.
Yeah. As safe as you can possibly be with one of them things.
Basically, yeah.
Penny Van says, I suddenly find myself nervous that the pair rubber band thing is going to be mentioned, and I'll have to hold my hernia for another week.
Okay, I'm missing the reference here.
When I said that's why I don't wear a Speedo, because I look like a Bartlett pear with a rubber band wrapped around it.
Oh, my God.
So I have respect for other people is why I don't wear a Speedo.
Yeah, I don't think Steve was here for that comment. I think
no, I missed that one.
Not gonna happen.
That must have been a Wednesday night.
It's not going to
that
happen. Just not
that
doing
was somebody asked about are the DAX Machina crew going to have a calendar?
Oh,
And DA was like,
okay.
probably not going to happen. And that's where that comment came from.
Oh my God.
it. Our roulette says alligators are dinosaurs. Yeah, basically.
Some things just don't need to be passed on to the public.
Yeah.
I got the biggest kick, when you go in for surgery, you always come out with surprises, no matter what it is. And, they tend to like shave you and just weird things. When I had my gallbladder out, it didn't ever occur to me that they would shave my chest, but they don't shave the whole thing. So they shave from like the nipple line down. And so I come out of surgery and
You had a furry dickie on?
Seriously, I had like this furry bra, and then my gut was stained yellow. I'm like, I come out of it, I'm like, what the fuck is this?
We just killed Robbie.
He had a furry bra.
It was ridiculous. I'm like, oh, but couldn't you just take the extra effort and take off the rest of it? Oh, I thought my wife was going to laugh so hard she was peeing herself. I was changing my clothes. What happened to you?
One can break me, but that was a good one.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh. Steve was trying out for the new Bigfoot.
Body double for Miss Sasquatch 2023.
Better keep Morgan away from you.
No joke. Miss Naomi says 40-year-old virgin revisited.
Pretty close, probably.
That just popped up and said we had a super chat, but I'm not seeing it in the comments.
I kept waiting for it to come out.
Yeah, I'm looking for it too.
It showed up on my phone. It hadn't showed up here yet.
I didn't. It wasn't up there long enough for me to see who gave it. I wanted to say thank you, but
there's Furkini.
Oh no, that's just a bad image.
Oh, we've got the best. We have the best chat. Oh, here it is. Here's your super chat. I found it.
Okay, pop it up. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Shiba dog at a combat position.
There you go.
Thank you for the super chat.
Oh, it just went down a sad path. That was a little bit embarrassing there, Robert D. I came out of that looking like John Quincy Adams, and we'll just leave it there.
Sound like you used to look like Grizzly Adams before they shaved you.
Well, like I said, they don't take the extra effort to shave anything clean, so with stuff looking like it has sideburns.
At least you weren't getting a colonoscopy and start seeing hearts and likes appear on the screen.
That's your truth.
Benny Van says, haha, I was going to say Grizzly Adams. Oh, there we go. Kay Bauer says a female Bigfoot would be like, a man.
Oh, that old Looney Tunes character.
I'll be a decoy.
Yeah.
Damn well that Nick Valente would use me as a decoy.
Oh, yeah, or bait.
It served his purpose. Bait, yeah.
Start calling you chum. Bigfoot chum.
Hey, chum, how are you?
Bigfoot chum.
Why are you calling me chum? Oh, because...
Yeah.
Robert D said, off the rails now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
We all knew it was going to happen.
Hour and a half.
We tried.
It was only a matter of time.
There was another famous account of the gray man. In 1943, a mountaineer named Alexander Tunian claimed that he had actually shot at the creature with his revolver. He had been climbing Ben MacDhui when a thick mist descended, so he descended by the Corey Ethachan path. He heard footsteps nearby, and remembering the account of Professor Colley, he peered cautiously into the mist. A strange shape loomed up and came charging toward him. Pulling his gun, he fired 3 times and then turned and ran down toward Glenderry. Uh, from the few descriptions of the creature, he is said to be quite large and broad-shouldered, standing erect and over 10 feet tall, with long waving arms. He's also described as having an olive complexion or alternatively covered with short brown hair. It said gray hair earlier. However, in the majority of cases, the creature is only heard or sensed among the high passes of the mountain. He's often seen just below the skyline near, I cannot pronounce that, Lairg, Lairg, Gru, Ghru, Lairg Gru Pass. Walkers who sense his presence are almost always overwhelmed with a sense of dread or terror. In some cases, the feeling becomes so intense that the walkers are drawn to the dangerous cliff edges, almost preparing to throw themselves into the abyss. Some say that he's trying to send climbers over the edge of a precipitous drop at Lurcher's Crag. Huh. Well, wasn't that how cavemen used to hunt, like antelope and stuff? They'd run them off of cliffs.
Yeah, that's how they hunt the mammoths. Yeah, they'd run them off the cliffs, and then they would go pick up the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So if Nick gave me a shout out, that has to be him talking about me being the human dogman lure.
Being on the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard him say that a time or two about you.
Yeah, I think it's his favorite story.
He thinks it's funny as hell. Yeah. Yeah, it's sad when
this
you
crazy
realize
SAB was peeing on a tree right next to the dogman.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I am living proof that you can be a highly educated person and be an idiot. I was completely out of my element when I went down with DA to go, down there to what was the name of where were we at, DA? He's distracted.
That was down in Joe Bald.
Joe Bald, thank you. Completely out of my element, and so, I'm diabetic. I had to piss. I didn't think too much of it, but clearly I made a tactical miscalculation that he found highly
I think you
amusing.
actually peed on the tree it was behind.
I think I did. Yeah. Oops. But clearly my field craft is not up to snuff for hunting cryptids. But in my defense, I have no military service under my belt, and my cryptid experience consists of this podcast. So I really am an idiot.
You'll get there. If nothing else, you're good bait.
Well, there you go.
DH1977 says, "Have you all seen the footage of Patterson Gimlin film?" Yeah, we've all seen that a few thousand times. There's more to the story. They were slaughtering those poor creatures. I've heard MK Davis talk about that a bit. Yeah, I'm thinking about having MK back on the show just to talk about that.
Jessica was talking about that the other night on her show too.
Mm-hmm. I think we may have to get MK back on the show just to talk about that particular incident.
That might be a good idea for a show, getting MK and Jessica, since they both have kind of in different ways have come to this conclusion. That might be a good thing, a good show to have them two on there discussing about it.
What's it? Robert D. To pair off of yours, Nick, in all seriousness, made the comment that part of the reason that we might have been safe in that whole little encounter was the fact that DA seems to think that it could smell the gun oil on the guns we were carrying, even though we were severely outgunned for a dogman. But marking my territory, it might have thought that I perhaps was enough of a challenge that it wasn't worth eating or trying to eat. I don't know. I'm glad it didn't come to that.
Just so amazed that did that guy just pee on the tree right in front of me?
Yeah,
they were either impressed or freaking out. Like, what?
It's like there's no way you did that. Big stones, man.
Miss Neoma says, I once heard that Bob Gimlin said he didn't shoot the Bigfoot because the others would have attacked him. I would love to have the connections to get Bob Gimlin on the show. I don't even think I could get the guy to answer me, but I'll reach out to him and try. I mean,
Hey, all you can say is no.
yeah, worst case scenario, he just ignores me.
So it would be the first person we've been completely ignored by.
Won't be the last.
Nope.
Oh, they almost busted my balls here. Yeah, I love you, Naoma.
Yeah, that could be closer to the truth than we want to realize.
Probably is. I just figured the dog man was health conscious and figured I'm too high in fat and sugar. He didn't want me.
Like, oh, I'm high in LDL cholesterol. That's the bad kind.
Seriously, haven't had enough kill for this guy.
Jack Mack says Dixie Cryptid had someone write in saying he's the son of one of the hunters hired to kill the Bigfoots by the logging company.
Yep.
That's interesting. But the thing is anybody can write into one of these shows and say anything they want. Proving it's the hard part. We can report stories, and I tend to, if somebody sends me a story and I relay it on the air, I relay it as it's written. I'm not there to fact check them. But if it's a situation where we could, I mean, like if one of us was there and this story is completely out of touch with everything, like for example, say Robbie and I see a Bigfoot in the woods. We go out in the woods and we see this Bigfoot and we both jump in the truck and take off. But the next day I hear the story from someone else that heard it from Robbie that it was throwing tree trunks at us and it threw a boulder and it smashed the window of the truck and none of that happened. I'm like, hey, Robbie, maybe you want to knock that back a little bit because none of that actually happened. But it's in the situation where we weren't there. All we can do is accept the account for as it's written. So it's hard to say whether or not the guy that wrote in a Dixie Cryptid said his dad was one of the hunters. It's hard to say if it was true or not, but at the same time, it's hard to say it's not true.
Sure. Well, and like we reiterate constantly over the last couple of years, one of the golden rules of this podcast is it is a judgment-free zone. If you come on here and say that you had sweet Bigfoot love with a group of Bigfoot or whatever, we're going to take it at your word because it's not our place to judge you. You've got your story. We
Or that you feed on a dog man.
Well, seriously, yeah. I mean, it is not our place to judge any of that.
I mean, it happens, right, Steve? I mean,
Well, shit happens. Well, and you all have both had cryptid encounters. DA's seen a dog man. You've seen a dog man. I haven't. Now, I'm not coming into this show going, well, they don't exist because I haven't seen it. Well, that you're trying to prove a negative. It's like the whole, trying to scientifically prove God. You can't prove a negative or disprove it. It's, going in open-minded and me personally, I tell people I'm the cryptid agnostic. I want to see the proof. I'd like to see the DNA evidence. I'd like to see the reproducible evidence. But until then, I'm open-minded.
Daniel Hull says, have you all thought about David Pilates Bigfoot 101 classes? I've looked at some of those, and I am not the guy that can, get up there and, start knocking other researchers. I just don't do that. There are lots of researchers out there that I agree with to some extent, but there's nobody out there that I 100% agree with. And that's perfectly fine. Everybody's got their theories. I don't necessarily agree with David Pilates on a lot of points, but he does make sense with a lot of the points as well. So, in this field, you've got to study what's available, look at what is presented, and judge for yourself which that you believe makes the most sense. One of the things that we've tried to do here on the show, and Steve and Robbie can back me up on this, is we try to offer logical explanations before we start saying it was a portal or it was cloaking or anything like that. We look for logical explanations. And I'm not saying portals don't exist. I'm not saying that mind speak doesn't exist. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that there are lots of possible explanations before you jump to that. I mean, it'd be like if we rolled up to a crime scene and immediately went, see a guy that's dead with no physical trauma, locked in his house by himself, and you just went, must be aliens.
Right. Occam's razor still has to apply.
Right. Yeah, you've got to look at the evidence and base your conclusions upon the evidence, not make the evidence fit your conclusions.
And I'm going to take the high road and be nice and not say anything.
Well, there's
about that comment.
We'll be nice, but there are some folks out there that probably need their meds adjusted. And I'm just gonna put that out there. I'm not singling anybody out. I'm not saying it's everybody, but there are some definite folks out there that need to get their meds checked.
Yeah. Well, and I think my biggest frustration with this community, and I'm not talking about the community on the chat right now, but I'm talking about the community as a whole. Community as a whole, is that there's so many people that are self-proclaimed experts. Okay, cryptozoology, if you break down the word, it is the science of the unknowable animals. Okay, how can you be an expert on an unknowable animal, an unknowable anything?
Exactly. And Shai's got a great point here. So I've been in forums that were toxic. If you don't take a pic, you're lying. If you don't tell us where it was, you're lying. I tend to leave forums like that because it's just utterly ridiculous.
Well, me personally, if I were out in the woods and I got a good tangible view of some kind of cryptid type critter, first of all, my asshole's going to pucker up to the point where I can make diamonds with it. Second of all, the last thing that's going to be on my mind is taking out my camera and taking a picture of this, because I'm going to de-ass the area post haste.
Exactly.
I guarantee you, if I come back with a story, you ain't getting a picture of it. Just saying.
Well, the one I saw in LBL, I saw it for almost 20 seconds, and the thought of taking a picture never once entered my brain.
Yeah, and your phone was in your freaking hand.
Yeah, it was in my hand.
Perfect example.
And you're a cryptozoologist. I mean, realistically, you don't define yourself as such, but you are.
When Jessica and I were in Georgia, and we had that experience when we were out there, and tree frogs and crickets and everything was going nuts, and all of a sudden everything just shut off. The last thing on my mind was pulling my phone out and recording that, because I was so and we had people, when we were talking on her show about it, people were like, well, why didn't you video? Why didn't you do that? We weren't out there for anybody else. We were out there to have an experience. It wasn't about going out and proving or disproving. It was because she knew a place that was very active, and she wanted to take me to this place for a chance for me to have an experience, and we did. And that's all it was. It was for she and I. It wasn't for anybody else. So these people are like, you're lying because you did it, or this, that, and that. A lot of cryptozoologists or people like us that are field researchers that just, it's not about going out and proving or disproving. It's about going out for us. A lot of times when I go out in the woods, I'm not going out there with the intention of having an encounter or finding a print or anything. A lot of times I'm just going out in the woods just to be out in the woods.
Sure. Right.
And if I find something, great.
Well, and if I'm having an encounter and I reach for something, I guarantee you I'm reaching for a sidearm, not thinking to myself, let me take a selfie.
My first reaction is to make sure I'm safe.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are people who go out there and, the minute their foot touches the ground, every camera that they've got is on, every audio recorder is on, and that's great. I mean, I'm not doubting that, and that's great that there are people who do that. If I was going out there expressly to do that, then that's what I would do. But, most of the time I'm going out there for myself to keep proving to myself that I'm right.
Right. You're going there for the religious experience, not the scientific one.
Yeah. I, for lack of a better term. Yeah. I mean, because here, and y'all agree with me.
Validating your own experiences.
I could care less who else believes if I'm telling the truth or not. It does not matter to me one iota if everybody thinks I'm lying about my experience or that I don't care. I really don't. That's why I don't get into these debates when people ask me my opinion. Yeah, I don't believe they use portals. I believe it's adaptive camouflage. It's a flesh and blood creature. I believe they backtrack, things like that. But I'm not going to get pulled into an argument about it because if somebody wants to believe that they can portal in and out, fine. Great. Have that opinion. It doesn't hurt my feelings one way or the other. You believe what you want to believe. I'll believe what I want to believe.
Yeah.
And but there are some people out there, and the three of us know plenty of them that just can't respect other people's opinions on the matter if it's different.
It's
Mike
like
from
anything else
Abnormal
in the world.
Investigations is absolutely right. He says a lot of investigators get mad if you disagree or have a different opinion. They don't allow for different opinions. To me, different opinions are what leads to solutions. Exactly.
Yep.
I don't discount anybody that's had experiences that I haven't. That's why I don't call people out and say the woo doesn't exist. It's just never happened to me. And while and something we've never claimed that the woo doesn't exist. People have had those experiences. We are not saying that is impossible. We look for logical explanations on how these things can happen.
And
right.
That's because most of us on this panel happen to agree with each other and have the same opinions. It doesn't really matter because that's kind of what brought us all together. But if Steve had a different opinion from me, I wouldn't feel any different about Steve's opinion on Bigfoot if he disagreed with me, because what does it hurt me if Steve believes that they portal versus I believe they're a real flesh and blood creature?
Well, that's exactly it. It's okay to disagree. Our society as a whole, and I'm not going to get political here, but our society as a whole has gotten to the point of I disagree, therefore I hate you.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I disagree, therefore you're wrong. Like I said, you both have had cryptid experiences. I have never had one. It would be very easy for me to say, well, y'all are full of shit. These things don't exist. No, my point is I've never had one. That's all it is. That's I may walk out to my mailbox tomorrow and have a dog man sitting there waiting for me. It's doubtful, but it is a non-zero probability that it's going to happen. And I just want, if we don't talk about it, you don't get to the bottom of it. Science is formed by asking questions, and I've got a hell of a lot of damn questions. And that's what I love about this panel, and that goes all the way down from those of us who are on live to those that are in the chat. Y'all are a group of very intelligent individuals asking intelligent questions, and this is how we learn.
Well, and the difference in what we do over here versus others that I've seen, we'll have people ask questions and we'll answer it to the best of our knowledge. Or if we don't know or we disagree, we're not, we don't know that, or, well, no, we don't really believe that, or whatever else. But other places you get fusses and fights in the chat, and with, I personally made comments in other people's shows, and DA was on this show when I made this comment. And I mean, I literally got attacked by one of the hosts of the show. Didn't I, DA?
Yeah.
And
hey guys, give me about a minute. I've got to run across the hall. I will be right back.
And DA and I, instead of getting back into the back and forth with him, we just both said, all right, we're going. See you. Well, because people in this day and age, you can't have a different opinion from somebody else, because if you do, and it's stupid. I mean, because there's 186 people in this chat right now. There's no way, or 187 now. There's no way all 187 people in that chat, me, you, and DA, all feel the exact same way about every topic that we talk about.
Seriously.
But we consistently have that kind of number every single time.
Well,
there's a reason for that.
The day I had that encounter, I guarantee you that the first thing I'm going to do I am going to pull out my phone. But it's not going to be to take a picture with this damn thing. It's going to be me texting you, texting DA, texting Nick Valente, and going, you ain't going to believe this shit. And
I finally had it.
yeah, seriously, yeah. Just because there'd be that the satisfaction, at heart, I'm a scientist. I want the evidence. But evidence can be experiential too. It's the same thing with with religion. You know, I happen to have faith. I don't have any scientific evidence to back it up. I have faith that these things are out here. I just don't have any scientific evidence to back it up yet. I would love to have the body. I would love to have the DNA evidence. I mean, I'm a microbiologist. I would be there with test tubes and swabs collecting shit. Once I got over the whole, Robbie, you can believe what I found. But
Well, but that's the thing. I mean, not everybody is out there for their 15 minutes of fame carrying 1,500 cameras and recorders and things like that with them. The main thing that I carry when I go in is the protection. I got a sidearm, or I got a rifle.
Yeah, a sidearm and a knife.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see it happen, and of course, I would tell the story on this channel. If I don't make a nickel off of this channel, I am on here just because DA is one of my best friends in the whole world, and I love the topic. But I guarantee you, the story would be on this channel the day it happened.
And I think that's why we all get along so good. I think that's why most people that I've heard here can't believe that. I mean, other than you two, obviously, because y'all have met, but none of the rest of us have ever met in real life. And people are like, "How in the world?" But we all have that same mentality. We all have the same end goal. Is and it's not to go out here and become rich and famous because of Bigfoot or Dogman or all. We all enjoy these topics. DA's writing has brought a lot of us together because he enjoys the topic. It's obvious because that's, it's obvious because I've had the experience. Steve, you want the experience. Doc has had his then there's a perfect example there. Doc's had paranormal experiences. I've never had one, but I'm not going to sit there and say Doc's a liar because I've never had a paranormal experience. There's way too many experiences that other people have had for me to be that kind of narrow-minded individual that would just say, you're lying just because I haven't had that experience.
Oh, right. Exactly. I mean, I've never been to Disneyland, but I refuse to say that, well, the Disney princesses don't exist because I've never seen one.
Yeah.
It's stupid, but I mean, seriously, that's how the argument gets sometimes. And
exactly. I mean, and people that there are people in this community who are like that. And I hate to harp on it, but that conference I went to in Georgia, there was a lot of them like that. That if you didn't believe exactly, and I promise you two, the question was asked, who is in the flesh and blood camp? My hand went up, and it was the only hand in the room that went up, and it said, who's in the woo camp? And every other hand in the room went up. I don't care. People are looking at me like, this flesh and blood guy over here.
Always somewhere says, how many cryptids do you guys believe are out there? It's anybody's guess. We don't know enough about them, about cryptids as a species to make even an educated guess on how many are out there. I mean, on Bigfoot alone, you can make kind of a guess based on grizzly bear numbers of populations, but without knowing how many live in an area or how many are a family group. All of this is all best guess. We've got sightings reports going back hundreds of years. We've got Native American folklore going back generations before European settlers ever set foot on this continent. We've got all this information. And we look at these and we try to make our best guesses based on, okay, this said they saw a group of 6, or this account said there was just 1. So it is impossible to say with any authority how many are out there. But I would guess there has to be a sizable population for them to be a stable breeding population.
And if if I was to go out and say, man, I just had a cryptid encounter. I just saw a Marmaduke. And everybody's like, what's that? And I start describing this thing, but there are no other people that have ever described what I'm describing. I'm the only person that's ever described this. I'm the only person that's ever called it a Marmaduke. You know, you look at, okay, what's he on? But when you start looking at it from the 1700s to now, all over the world, how many encounters are described by something that we call Bigfoot? It's like it's just like I say in my opening for what's really out there. You know, is it a hoax? If it's a hoax, basically, if it's a hoax, it is the most collaborative, high tech, with the most people ever involved in it, including myself, and I don't even know I'm in it, including DA, and he probably didn't know he was in it either. You know, we're all part of this hoax. I mean, that's the only other explanation if it's not real.
Yeah. Jack Mack says, why can't there be a combo platter of flesh and blood in the woo? There very well could be, and we're not saying it's not possible. It's not possible, and we've never eliminated the woo. We've never once came out and said that's BS. That doesn't happen. What we try to do is, like, for example, Robbie is a trained tracker. I've spent most of my adult life. I've been going out in the woods since I was a kid. Deer hunting, fishing, camping, anything you can do in the woods, I've done it. What we try to do is we look for logical explanations for some of these stories, and we're not saying that is the explanation. We look for something that makes logical sense. Like, for example, when somebody
explanation,
right, Occam's razor. For example, one of the big ones, when people say Bigfoot went through a portal, they said we were following tracks and it went into an open field and it just disappeared. That doesn't mean it went through a portal. That means that means a number of things. It could mean they went through a portal, but we're not saying that it's impossible. We're not saying it didn't. But a far more likely explanation is that it backtracked on its tracks. Our special forces are trained to do that. Bears do that.
Rabbits do that.
Rabbits will do that. Will backtrack on their own tracks and throw you off. Robbie, as a tracker, now let's just say you took a guy out in the woods who didn't know first thing about tracking, and you two both followed the same set of tracks of, we'll say, a Bigfoot, just for the sake of argument. And you go out in the middle of the field, and the tracks stop, and he looks at it and goes, "Well, it disappeared." That would be somebody who didn't know a lot about tracking's first impression. It disappeared. It had to have gone somewhere. But as a tracker, there are things you can look for that people don't always know about. Yep. And you want to talk a little bit about that, how it can backtrack and leave telltale signs if you know what you're looking for.
Yep. And I've told this before. When the first 2 days of our tracking school, they took us out there in the infield of a baseball field, excuse me, and laid all kinds of tracks, showed us everything, and backtracking was actually part of that. And he would actually take a step forward, and then he would take a step backwards and let us look at how the foot, the point of impact is different on a step when you're walking forward. Your point of impact, the primary point of impact is going to be your heel. So when your heel hits the ground and presses down, the dirt's going to fall into the track, and it's going to get mashed down into the track. But when your primary point of impact is your toes, as you're walking backwards, instead of the heel pushing it down into it because your foot's moving this way, think about it. When you put your toes down first and you're walking backwards, it's going to push dirt up and out of the front of the track. Mm-hmm. That, now, if you've never done this before and you've never looked at this, you're not going to sit down and look at the track and say, okay, there's dirt at the front of the track. That means it's a likelihood that this is a backtrack, because the primary point of impact was the toe, and as it's walking backwards, you're pushing dirt the other way instead of pushing it down into the track, you're pushing it out of the track. And there's 100 more things with that. The way that
That's
your
a good
pressure
comment here.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be called a backtrack, but that would be the same thing. It goes to a point, stops, and then and we actually did it. One of our guys did something like that too, where he walked up and stopped, and then jumped sideways. So I mean, humans can do that too. So if we're smart enough to do it, they're smart enough to do it. Like I said, I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of hunters out tracking grizzly bears and grizzlies backtracking on themselves, and before you know it, they're around behind the hunter. Rabbits will do it when dogs are on them. They'll start backtracking so tight that they're almost on the dog's tail before the dog even realizes they're there.
Well, to circle back on something DA said, we've mentioned before, a good friend of mine, Rick. Rick is a former Army Ranger. Thankfully, I consider him a brother because he's one of the scariest son of a bitches I ever met in my life. But we were playing paintball one time, about 15 years ago or so. And we were in a pretty heavily wooded area, and he was 10 to 12 feet away from me. And I turned away to react to something else, and he was gone. Like, literally, he vanished. One could argue, oh, he went into a portal, he dimensionally shifted, he whatever. The more simple explanation is the fact that this guy is a top tier special forces operator who has learned how to make himself disappear, with his own capabilities.
And he was taught to do it. He wasn't born into it.
Right, exactly. He vanished. He doesn't have any genetic manipulation. He's not biologically designed to do this. He's a human who's had a lot of training, from experts, but he disappeared. Like I said, he was gone, and he surfaced at the end of the game. When he shot me, but it's there's still the possibility that he went into a portal. It's a non-zero probability, but it wasn't the most likely explanation about what happened with him.
Yeah.
Like the night we had MK Davis on the show, he showed that video clip. This Bigfoot walked in front of a tree and stopped moving and disappeared right in front of us. And it wasn't until that it started moving again that it reappeared. And I firmly believe that is because of those clear hair shafts. I don't think I think it. People may call it cloaking. You can call it whatever you like. But I think it is a natural adaptation. I don't think it's like some paranormal or supernatural ability. I think it is a natural adaptation. What would you call it? Adaptive camouflage. It is adaptive camouflage. Daniel Hoyle says, "I'll probably get laughed at for this, but what about the possibility that Bigfoot could be Nephilim?" Dude, not going to laugh at you about it. It's entirely possible. Nephilim are mentioned in a lot of biblical texts. Supposedly they are the descendants of the descendants of fallen angels,
sons of God and daughters of man.
Right. So
it had children, and the Nephilim are the children of the sons of God, which are the fallen angels, and the daughters of man.
I'm not going to say it's impossible. I'm not going to rule it out. I'll never say it's impossible. I think it's far more likely that it is a relic population of Neanderthal, or possibly even an undiscovered species of ape. But I won't say that it's impossible that it could be Nephilim. And it's just because it's like a remnant population of Neanderthal doesn't rule out that Neanderthal was the original Nephilim. It's not saying it's impossible. It's just saying we're looking for more physical evidence, and comes from decades of law enforcement training.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example right there. Some of them could be that. Some of them there's more than one species of this out there. So that's like saying all big cats are tigers. Don't matter if they're a lion. Don't matter if they're a jaguar. They're tigers. All big cats are tigers because they're big cats, so they're all tigers. I mean, there's lions, jaguars, cougars, tigers.
bobcats,
lynx,
ocelots.
Yeah, there's the big cats or sharks. All sharks are great whites.
Leopards, cheetahs. Yeah, great. Yeah, exactly.
You can't put something like that in one category. That's why there's so many. What's the word, Steve? Genus of a species.
Right. A given genus has multiple species.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, just because you have the genus of this that might be Neanderthal, for lack of a better term, that doesn't mean that every single one of them is the exact same thing.
Right. Well, yeah, all Bigfoot are cryptids, but not all cryptids are necessarily Bigfoot.
Right. Nighthawk says, I keep telling you guys there are 4 types that I've encountered. Nighthawk's encountered four different types personally. I personally think there are more out there than just 4 types. But those are the ones that he's encountered personally, and I would love to have some of his experiences. He's spent a lot more time in the woods than I have, and I've spent a lot. Now, that's saying something. But when you factor in reports from across the globe, like in Australia, the Yowie, in China, the Yeren, the Alma, the Almasti, the Yeti. I mean, at every different part of the globe, except for
Orang Pendek.
The Orang Pendek. There are dozens of different names for Bigfoot type creatures. Again, the subject of tonight's show, the Am Fear Liath Mór, the gray man of the Cairngorms. They're every continent, every area except for Antarctica, as far as we know, has its own type of Bigfoot type creatures.
Well, and they have their own descriptions. The Orang Pendek is described as a hobbit type creature. It's small. Sasquatch, the typical PG type Bigfoot is considered bigger than us.
I think Orang Pendek translates to like little man of the forest.
Yeah.
I think what it actually translates to.
I think so, yeah.
But, you wouldn't look at an Orang Pendek, though, and say, oh, that's Bigfoot. It's a different critter. Well, the subject of tonight's show, short gray hair.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, when I think Bigfoot, I don't think short gray hair. I think long red, brown, black hair.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a whole bunch of different critters, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you said it, Steve. All Bigfoots are cryptids, but not all cryptids are Bigfoot.
Right.
I mean,
you look at the Loch Ness Monster, you're not going to go, that's a Bigfoot. No, it's a cryptid.
Yeah, Bigfoot and Dogman, totally different things, but they're both cryptids. Well, Tombstone, who's Tombs in the chat, he was sending me something the other day. There was recently discovered, and I can't remember where it was. Tomb probably know better than I do off the top of his head, but there was an area where there were dozens of new species discovered, and I want to say it was in South America, but I could be
probably
wrong.
Papua New Guinea. They're finding new species down there all the time.
Yeah, they found just a crap ton of new species all at one time. Let me see if, and that's just
that, and that actually ties into another point here, Da. We were talking about we mentioned before the coelacanth. Talking about extinct animals. Oh, there's no more coelacanth. They're gone. They're extinct. They don't exist anymore. In like 1938, I think it was. All of a sudden, they found them again. And they're like, oh, hey, yeah, there they are. We heard that the Tasmanian tiger, was extinct in the 1920s. Yep. We're seeing trail cam footage of was probably Tassies.
Mm-hmm.
Forrest Galante is pretty. He's about 99% sure that the thylacine is still alive, and in Papua New Guinea is one of the places, because that place is just such a
so remote.
Yeah, so remote and such a rich ecosystem that he's done tons of video. Matter of fact, there was a guy that was in one of the villages out there, and it was so remote that he didn't have a cell phone. So Forrest actually tried to get a cell phone to him, but by the time the phone went from here to wherever it needed to go to there, the dog that the guy claimed, and the guy described it, I mean, almost perfectly identical to what a thylacine would look like.
Mm-hmm.
but it had got killed by a couple of the village dogs before it got there. And they had either burned it or buried it or something like that before the camera got there, with the instructions on how to use it. So,
Right.
I mean,
Penny Vance says, for all we know, these cryptids could have originated from the seas. Some of them could. I think in the case of Bigfoot, though, and this would include the gray man of the Cairngorms, I think they're subterranean. And I think that's what wood knocks are. Robbie and I have discussed this. Steve's chimed in on this. If Doc was here, he'd chime in on it. We think that what people refer to as wood knocking is actually done with their mouth, and we think that it's a form of echolocation.
Yep. And Steve, he's actually not this Steve, but the other Steve Lamb. He's actually heard that out in the and it was so close. He said, "I am 100% sure this is not a piece of wood hitting a tree. It is a tongue making that clicking sound. But it is so loud that when you hear it from a distance, that's the only thing people can equate it to, because you just can't imagine that sound being made." But he said when you hear it close up like he did, he said it is without a doubt, you can tell that's what it is.
Well, I'm not a Bigfoot, but I can make a hell of a lot of racket with just my tongue. I mean, you can hear it a long way. I've done it when buddies and I were out in the woods, and you can hear it for quite some time, some distance.
Yeah. Well, and acoustics is a funny thing. You don't always think about.
Tomb found it for me. Along the Mekong River that separates Laos and Thailand, 380 new species have just been identified.
That's amazing. It's a whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
But we think about acoustics sometimes, about how they can how the sounds don't necessarily seem to fit the physical critter. Like for example, pigeons. We've got pigeons here near my apartment. The very low, loud sound that pigeons make don't look like they could come from a pigeon, but they do. Back when the couple of years ago, Summer Olympics, I don't remember if it was Australia or New Zealand folks that were there, but they brought didgeridoos, and the deafening noise that was made by these simple pipes, you wouldn't think acoustically would make that sound, that it would be that loud, but it's surprising sometimes. I love William.
It's too loud to be wood hitting wood, especially if it's a 9 foot tall, 800-pound hairy power lifter. Good point.
For some reason, I had the mental picture of Shane Moore.
No, Shane's not that tall. Shane's like 5'5".
Yeah, he's short, but I'm thinking he's a beast.
But answer me this question: how many times have you been out in the woods and try to pick up a piece of wood that would be perfect to hit a tree and make sound with it? Have you ever found a piece that ain't rotten,
right,
or is too small? So
if it's deadfall, it's deadfall for a reason. I mean,
so
I've shattered lots of sticks against trees just swinging them.
Either it's what we said, or Bigfoot is walking around with a Louisville Slugger in his hands.
Right.
And
yeah,
I don't think they've mastered Amazon or eBay yet.
Probably not. Mike from Abnormal Investigation says, one of my theories is that they are Nephilim. Lucifer made great music, I believe, from different vocal cords passed down to them, and that's how they make acoustics we can't hear, maybe an echolocation. Yeah, and that's entirely possible. I mean, again, we're not calling anybody out. We're not saying any theories are invalid, because that's all any of us have are theories.
Well, that's what
we're looking for. We're looking for the ones that make the most logical sense.
That's what we think the clicks are, is echolocation.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There, I knew Toombs would keep me straight on that, and I apologize. I could not remember whether it was Australia or the Kiwis or what, that there was a concern about the didgeridoos, like because of the whole sound of it. I was very shocked when I heard them on a news broadcast. I'm like, how the hell is that pipe making that sound? And well, even since we're on the subject of Scotland, even the bagpipes. Think about how loud a bagpipe can get for what it basically really is. It's a bag connected to a bunch of clarinets, basically. But some sound.
Billy Mitchum says, have you ever heard a gorilla hit its chest? It sounds just like rocks clicking together, but fast. Yeah, when you've got something with that much bass to it, like the thickness of their chest muscles and the volume of air their lungs must be able to hold, yeah, that make a heck of a lot of noise.
What's the force behind it? Good Lord.
Oh, yeah. Or if you've ever seen gorillas putting on an aggressive display, they'll drive their fists into the ground. That makes a hell of a thud.
Yeah. Wouldn't be having a peeing contest one of them for sure.
No, take a big old pass.
Mm-hmm. How is it the doc phrases it? It's just about get the hell out of here time or whatever. How is he phrases it?
Yeah, look at the time. It's time to go. James Montgomery says, how about infrasound? Most humans don't have that ability. Yeah, we definitely believe they're capable of infrasound. There's so many animals in the animal kingdom that can do it. Elephants do it. Whales do it. Tigers do it. Ask Tomb in the audience about what kind of racket that a freaking koala will make.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you have to consider what the critter is able to hear itself. Most humans can't hear below 20 to 40 hertz. So there's no benefit to us, evolutionarily to be able to make sounds below that frequency because we can't hear them.
Right.
We don't know what these other critters can hear. If a koala can hear down to 12 hertz, well, then it could potentially make sounds at 12 hertz because there'd be some value to it. It's like the real high frequencies. We can't hear some of these dog frequencies because we can't hear them. Why would we make them?
Well, in a lot of times, you think about if a koala can hear that in that low of a spectrum, it may be because of whatever preys upon it makes sound in that, so it needs to be able to hear in that spectrum. Versus, that's another reason that things happen for that reason.
Truth, yeah. It's all about evolutionary advantage. Either they need to hear it themselves or something that's after them and makes the sound and they have to be able to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Shade Viking said, here's a strange fact. Gorillas don't eat a lot of protein and actually have a low testosterone level, sometimes lower than some men. Yeah, but the billy ape, on the other hand, is more omnivorous. The billy ape will actively hunt other animals. And they have actually been reported to make war on other clans. So, where does the Bigfoot fall in that spectrum? I would say they're definitely omnivorous, but much like bears, the farther north you get, the colder the climate, the more protein they're going to need to take in. So I would say the ones that are farther north are the more carnivorous, like the gugway, what that?
Genosqua.
The Genosqua, the mountain giants. I think the farther north you get, the more carnivorous, more purely carnivorous they are.
Well,
Steve's heading to bed. Good night, buddy.
If they don't have the veggie calories, they're going to have the meat calories.
Right.
An animal of a certain size has to have a finite amount of calories. Robbie, D.A., and I, we're all about the same size men. We're not going to survive on 100 calories a day.
No.
We need whatever our body mass requires, 2,000 calories or whatever it is. If we can't get it from kale, we got to get it from beef,
And there's just something infinitely more satisfying about a well-cooked steak than a well-cooked piece of kale.
Well, that too. I mean, I'm not dissing vegetarians, but the point is, if they're out in the north, you saw the picture you just posted of that mountain there in Scotland. I don't see any plants. I see a whole hell of a lot of rocks.
Right.
And
Karen Polson said, what would the Scottish Bigfoot eat? I would guess it's an omnivore, but probably focuses a lot on
Sheep.
on meat.
It
Yeah,
eats
sheep.
haggis.
Haggis. Eat sheep. What comes down off the mountain eats the sheep probably, because the energy concentration is going to be higher in the meat.
Daniel Hoyle says, "Are the Native Americans referred to them as people or brothers of the forest, not as animals?" True. The Lakota word Shiyetanka means big elder brother, but there are other tribes that don't describe them that way. I think they're different in different parts of the country, and I think it varies from tribe to tribe. If they're as intelligent as we think they are, we're certainly going to see a wide variety of personalities among them. I mean,
Yeah.
if you take two dogs of the same breed, they're not going to act identically.
Yeah, the Cherokee didn't describe them as a big elder brother.
Yeah. Well, I think though, even within the same species, though, like, technically, your dog Harley and my little Morky Kenai are the same species. They don't look at all alike. They don't behave alike. There's that variance just within breeds, even though they're the same species.
Yeah, Mike from Abnormal Investigations got a good point. So I've heard a lot of campers talk about waking up and there's a stringer of fish gone, and they say it was secure. I've heard of that, or their coolers have been rifled through. Coolers that have raccoon-proof lids on them have been opened and gone through. Yeah, yes, could it have been somebody else sneaking into the camp stealing food? It's entirely possible. It takes opposable thumbs to open some of those things. But when you start coupling that with other things like, the quote unquote tree knocks or screams in the night, it becomes far more likely that you had a Bigfoot open your coolers. Penny Van says Scottish cryptids often eat late night pub crawlers.
Well, it's nice to see I'm on the menu.
What would say, DA? Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
Right. There's a good comment here. Roxanne Delgado says, DA, it's like you said one time, Bigfoot in different parts of the U.S., some are more aggressive than others. And I think it varies from tribe to tribe. And it also varies from individual to individual. There are some cases of people, there's cases I've heard of loggers who've said, I had a tree fall on me and one showed up and rolled the tree off of me and saved my life. Or you've got that kid in North Carolina that said a big bear kept him warm for 3 days and fed him berries. Bears don't do that. So you get stories of helpful Bigfoot, but then you've got others like the David Martin case where it abducted a kid and he was never seen again. And I don't think it was abducting him. Yeah, I don't think it was abducting the kid because it wanted a pet. I think it later ate that kid.
I will call him George.
But yeah, I think there
Gossamer the Bigfoot.
That's right. I think there are some Bigfoot out there that are less aggressive toward people, and again, much like bears, it may just be time of the year or how hungry they are. I've told the story before. I'll relate it again. I rounded a corner on a trail one time. I believe it was up in Rocky Mountain National, and came almost nose to nose with a grizzly bear. I mean, I play this game with my idiot dog Harley, where I'll reach out and go boop and boop him on the nose, and he'll look at me, and then I'll start to do it again. He'll turn his head. And I could have done that to that grizzly bear. I could have reached out and just popped it on the nose. Probably would have been a bad ending if I'd have done that, but we were close enough I could touch its nose. And it looked at me, and I looked at it, and I'm like, oh shit, a grizzly bear. And it was like, oh shit, a human. And we went our separate ways. And had it been hungry or had it had cubs with it and I got too close, probably would have ended differently. I probably would have been a missing 411 or a bear scat in the mountains. But it went its way and I went mine. And
Grizzly
that's
man
pretty much
part
just
two.
how it. Abnormal Mike over at Abnormal says, I think they're also opportunists. I totally agree.
Well, and it's like my thing with the alligator. That grizzly, chances are, was pretty well fed and wasn't particularly hungry. And you weren't worth the effort at that moment.
Right.
Risk
versus reward.
Well, exactly. I mean, that 11, 12-foot gator that I sat on, clearly I was potentially on the menu. It just wasn't hungry at that moment.
Well, I've heard plenty of stories about people that keep, big constrictors as pets, and there was one that just like is nightmare fuel, where a woman had a big retic, and it stopped eating. So she, every time she'd go to feed it, and she'd let this thing sleep with her in the bed at night, which is, we ain't gonna get into that part of the story because that's stupid, whatever. But it is what it is.
Pass.
So it stopped eating, wouldn't eat. She took it to the vet, and the vet started asking her a bunch of questions. And he finally said, "You said you let this thing sleep with you at night?" And she's like, "Yeah." She said, "This thing's starving itself because you're on the menu."
It's planning on eating you.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I'm like,
that's a hell of a nope right there.
Time for boots. It's time for luggage. It's time for a belt.
Unlike Doc, I'm not scared of snakes, but I'm going to take a hard pass on that one.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of big snakes in the Ozarks, but I ain't never seen one big enough to eat me. And I damn sure don't want one as a pet.
Nope.
Boys, we are coming up on the 2.5 hour mark. Maybe it's a time we start talking about our good folks on the affiliate program, and then start winding things down.
I think that's a great idea.
I don't have the video uploaded for our good fellow Mr. Doc. Steve, how about you do the honors and tell us a little bit about Dark Angel Medical?
Sure. So Dark Angel Medical, of course, our friend Carrie Pocket Doc Davis here is one of the founding members of that company. They make medical kits, trauma kits for just about any traumatic situation you could encounter. And all their stuff is American made by American suppliers, and they're the best kits in the business. They are not cheap because they are not cheap kits. They are wonderful, as DA likes to say. If you haven't, it's better to have and don't need than need and don't have. And if you need it and don't have it, you'll never need it again. All of his kits come with a kit for life guarantee, meaning that if you use your kit to save a life, send them the story. And what is left of your kit, they will make sure that the remaining parts are all serviceable. They'll repack and they'll send it back to you. So you buy it once, you have it forever. Of course, Doc features in the DA verse stories, especially the codename Wild Hunt stories. We all know the wonderful scene of Doc and the Wendigo making sweet love to his snowmobile. They feature very prominently in the story. And of course, this company gives a wonderful discount. If you use the discount code Cryptid25, you'll get 25% off of your order. And in addition to that, the Dark Angel does training on the kits. And so if you have some business contact where you have to have that type of training, they will set you up. I believe Doc said that they need a class of 12, a maximum of 24, and they will teach you everything that you want to know. And
it's like drinking out of a fire hose for 2 days.
There you go. But I know DA carried one of the kits when he was on wearing the badge. A lot of other folks have done so. They're the best out there. They're absolutely amazing, and he has the knowledge to back it up. So definitely worth looking into.
Doc, Steve, thank you, brother. And again, use discount code Cryptid25 at checkout. That'll get you 25% off your entire order. And if you mention Team Odin or codename Wild Hunt in the notes, you can get one of those little cool Team Odin rockers on your kit. Yep. Robbie, would you like to tell us a little bit about Scallywag?
These are the rockers in question here. So badass, I have to say.
Very much so.
All right. Following up on that, another veteran-owned company, Scallywag Tactical. They make knives, all kinds of knife, fixed blades, folders, axes, fishing knives, kitchen knives. If it's a blade, they probably got it. Some fantasy style blades, everyday carry blades,
Cooking
special
knives.
purpose cooking knives, things like that. Knives like the Orca here, which is a good EDC knife or everyday carry. It's got good serrated blade or portion of a blade and a regular straight edge blade. It's a very, very, very affordable knife. I think with shipping and all, I paid like maybe $12 altogether for this knife. That's the Jolly Roger, I believe, right, DA?
Yeah, it's Jolly Roger.
Yep.
And
I've got the what is it? The
Doc's
Privateer.
Claymore. Oh, that's Privateer. I thought you were gonna pull out Doc's Claymore.
Oh yeah. So since I work at a hospital, I don't carry as big a knives as y'all do. So I carry the mini jack, which is also known as the Claymore for Doc, and sharp as hell.
Yep. And DA had just had the sailor assisted folder. That's probably one of my favorite ones. I've got the one like that in copper, and I thought it was just super cool to look at. So that's the one I carry in my uniform now. I carry this one pretty much every day if I'm off, just because that's with that serrated edge, that's a good if I'm out in the shop, this is the one that's with me. You cannot go to Bass Pro Shops or Cabela's or any of those other places and find a knife for the price that's going to be better than these knives. You might find some that are going to be maybe close, but I guarantee you none of them are going to be as sharp out of the box as these. None of them are going to hold an edge as long as any of these. These are some of the sharpest knives I've ever had. Period. They're very high quality. So, and they've also got a thing called the blemish blade section. Get on there, find you. This was a blemish blade. Some of those that DA's held up were blemish blades. Find you a good deal on a blade. Go to the checkout, put code DA Roberts 10, get you 10% off the order. You won't be disappointed with these knives. These are great knives. Every one of us have got multiple, as you've seen. Every one of us has got multiple. And Karen Paulson said, Tomb's got a Jolly Roger. That's a really good knife too. I've got one of those.
I think we all have the Jolly Roger.
Yep.
That is probably as much knife as I will ever need.
Jolly Roger is my everyday carry. I carry that everywhere.
And well, what I like about their stuff is like Robbie said, the stuff, they're just ridiculously sharp. But just some of the materials that they use. I mean, some of these are with Damascus steel. The Privateer is D2 die steel. That's some of the hardest damn steel on the planet. And it comes sharp. Yep. I've had this one for well over a year. I have cut things I probably shouldn't have with it. And I've never touched a whetstone to it.
And every one of them are open so easy. I mean, that's almost criminal how easy that knife opens.
Right. Well, and Craig and the guys backed their stuff up too. When I first bought my first Privateer, I'll be honest, I was prying something I shouldn't have with it, and I'm a knife idiot. And D2 die steel is very, very hard. Well, anybody who knows anything about metals knows that things that are very, very hard are very brittle. And I snapped the last little eighth of an inch off the end of it. And of course I felt like an immediate dumbass because it's, an expensive knife and it's, it was dumb. And so I emailed Craig and he gave me a little bit of a polite dressing down. He's like, send it back to us. I'll put a new edge on it for you. And so he re-edged the knife for me. And then of course educated me on how to properly take care of a good knife. But he backed it up. He didn't have to do that. He could have just simply said, dumbass, buy another one. And
you're a hunter or a fisherman?
The bad fish.
This is an awesome blade to have in your tackle box. Just an absolute stunning knife and stupid sharp. They don't make short work of even the biggest fish.
Because as Doc and I both fond of saying, These knives will cut you 3 ways: long, deep, and continuous.
Daniel Hoyle says, "What's the biggest fixed blade knife they make?" Well, funny you should ask. The biggest one they make is this one. It's called the Bounty.
That's an S word.
Yeah.
It's
It's
very
their
Capable of
version
two-handed-
of the
S word,
machete.
Capable of two-handed use. It's got a slightly curved blade reminiscent of the Gurkha knives. This thing will lop a limb off of a tree without much effort, and would probably do the same to a person. It is just an absolute stunningly sharp piece of cutlery. When I go out in the field, this is actually clipped to the side of my pack, where it's an easy reach. But all the scallywag blades, the fixed blades, come with a molded Kydex sheath. Just fantastic blade, and this thing will hook to your belt, or you can Velcro it or tab it to a pack, or most of it will even fit on Molly gear. But this is the biggest one they make, and it's called the Bounty.
You show up with a machete, and Scallywag Tactical goes, "Bitch, please."
Did you show the gunner's mate DA, the little brother of the Bounty?
Oh, let me dig up my gunner's mate. It's under a few things.
Yep. DA's office is the 4th largest standing army in Missouri. So
it just about is. Who is the gunner's mate?
how the hell do you lose a 1-foot-long knife?
Well, it's under a bunch of other knives, including my massive kukri. But
I brought my little mini jack to work. Of course, I work as an active nurse in the hospital, and there's always something we need to cut open that nurses' shears don't do it. I whipped this thing out and then flipped it open, and my coworker jumped and like, "You're carrying a switchblade." I'm like, "Oh, honey, you have no idea what you've been talking about." But it does all I needed to do.
They're great knives.
And I bought mine. Unfortunately, there was not a blemished one of mine available when I bought it, but I think I paid like $14 for it. Best $14 I ever spent. But I would buy a blem in a heartbeat. For the most part, the blems are not damaged knives. It's just that the packaging got damaged. They
box usually.
Right. They've got some pretty high-end packaging, and you nick a corner on one of their boxes, they're not going to sell it as new. They're going to sell it as blemished, and they'll take maybe even half off of it. So
I don't know what I did with the gunner's mate.
It's still taken.
Oh, found it. That was it.
There you go.
That is a beautiful knife.
I love this knife. I love all
some
my
good stuff.
scallywags.
Well, they make good stuff, just like Dark Angel are veteran owned, and got to support them.
And our third affiliate is Ken Brock from Brock Blades. He's usually in the audience, but I didn't see him tonight.
Yeah.
If you can check him out at brockblades.com. This is one of his. All of Ken's blades are handmade. He's a veteran of law enforcement, a couple of decades in law enforcement. He makes these at a forge at his house. This is the Skane Du, which is a Scottish knife. It means black blade. This was traditionally a holdout knife that most Highlanders kept in their sock. This is another blade that goes pretty much everywhere with me. It's just an all-around great utility knife for pretty much anything. The one he made for me is made out of titanium. Just wicked sharp, absolutely fantastic blade. Will Gray Eagle in my books carries the Brock Blades Ardennes, which is basically about the size of that gunner's mate. It's a full-blown Bowie knife, and I've got one of those on order. Ken's making one for me. When I get it, I'll be happy to show it off. But if you order from brockblades.com, make sure to tell him that you found him from us, that you heard about him through DAX Machina, and he'll give you 10% off your order. And again, we're happy to be sponsors of. We're happy to be presenting blades and veteran-owned companies. We're all about supporting our veteran-owned companies, and this being Memorial Day weekend is especially near and dear to our heart, because this isn't just a weekend about barbecues and people going to the lake. This is Memorial Day. This is when we commemorate those who made the ultimate sacrifice. A lot of folks have been handed that folded flag, and that's what Memorial Day is all about, is remembering those who paid the ultimate price for our freedom. So keep that in mind when you're celebrating with your family this weekend or barbecuing. Lift a glass, lift a drink to those who didn't make it home, those who paid the ultimate sacrifice to give us our freedoms and the things we enjoy.
Well, as Winston Churchill said, so few did so much for so many. Unlike the rest of this crowd here, I've never had the honor of serving, and I appreciate so much those who have. Thank you.
We're big supporters of our veteran-owned companies. We're also supporters of the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide. Some guys are still fighting that battle even though they're home. So this Memorial Day, again, remember those that paid the ultimate sacrifice, but check in on your friends that are first responders or law enforcement or anybody that's served in uniform, because everybody that's served in uniform has seen something horrible. And Steve can tell you, he worked in the nursing field. The first responders that work there are second to none. They see the most horrible parts of things that we shouldn't see. They deal with life and death on a daily basis. So reach out to those who are first responders, who have been in the military. Even if they haven't seen combat, it doesn't mean they didn't see something bad. But let them know you're thinking about them. Reach out to those folks and let them know that this Memorial Day, you're thinking of them as well, because you might be the one text or the one voice that keeps them from becoming the next 21 a day, 22 a day.
Please do that. As a healthcare provider, I've chased a few demons down a bottle over the years. And there's been a couple of times where DA has been the unfortunate recipient of a late night text talking me off a ledge, and certainly I don't have near the experience that some of these folks have to keep them up at night.
One of the experiences I've had that shook me the most wasn't even as a cop. I was working security at the hospital. Security had to be present at the landing and takeoff of all helicopters. And we got called to the roof, and this is right after I started as the security detachment. We got called up there because they were coming in. They were doing CPR en route. They were wanting all additional people up there to help unload and keep them moving. And this particular helicopter, the doors were at the back of the chopper, and they opened like this. And we go running up there with a gurney, and they basically offloaded the stretcher onto the gurney with the flight medic straddled the person doing compressions. They were pushing fluids into this person as fast as they could put him in blood. And one of the flight medics goes, "Here," and hands me a bundle and says, "Keep up and don't you've got to get these to surgery with us. Keep up with us." And I looked down and realized I was holding this woman's legs. And that shook me. I was absolutely freaked out. As a cop, I'd never had somebody hand me appendages. This lady had been in a car wreck. Both of her legs had been amputated just above the knee. The hospital that Steve works at, that I used to work at, is a level 1 trauma center, one of the best in the Midwest. They were able to save one of her legs, but they couldn't save both because one of them had been crushed off. The other was basically just severed. But I had never before in my life had somebody just hand me a couple of limbs, and it was jarring. And nothing in my law enforcement career prepared me to be handed legs. So my hat's off to the men and women that do that daily.
I had the pleasure of working with some pretty certifiable badasses. Like you said, we're a level 1 trauma center. We're a town of about 160 to 200,000 people, depending on the time of year. But our chief of trauma was the best there is. And if you've ever are familiar with the lone survivor story, Marcus Luttrell from that story was the lone survivor of a really bad spec ops mission, and the Air Force colonel who was a surgeon that put him back together in Germany after this was all done was our chief of trauma. And
Hell of a doctor.
Badass,
and a super nice guy.
Oh, hell of a nice guy. Once you get past the fact he's 6'7", he's a hell of a cool dude. But
he's easy to spot coming through a crowd too.
Yeah, you can't miss him. He took my wife's gallbladder out, and she's like, "Oh my God, that's him." I'm like, "Yeah, you got the best in the business," But yeah, badass.
So, folks, our hats are off, and our hearts go out to everybody, every first responder out there, from the guys who run the bus, the ambulance crews that see everything that every imaginable horrible thing that can happen to a human body. Ambulance crews and flight medics deal with it, to the nursing staff that deal with it when it's at the hospital, nursing staff and doctors who deal with it once it's at the hospital, to security personnel that are dealing with critical incidents, to law enforcement, everybody that is a first responder. Our hats and our hearts are out to every one of them. The ladies and men in uniform of our armed services. A big thank you to every one of you guys that have not only put their butt on the line to give us the freedoms that we enjoy, but especially to those that made the ultimate sacrifice. And that's what Memorial Day weekend is all about. A big shout out, to everybody that's in uniform, and thank you guys who have, as the saying goes, all gave some and some gave all. This weekend is all about the ones that gave it all. But still, reach out to those first responders, those men and women that have served in uniform, and just check on them, because 22 a day is 22 too many. Let's get that down.
Another one.
Yeah, let's get that number down to 0 if we can. And if you're of a mind of giving to charity, keep the 22 a day and the Valhalla Project in mind, because the money that those two charities generate, I know for a fact, goes back into veterans charities. I don't give money to the Wounded Warrior Project after I found out that 90% of the money they collect goes to salaries. So I don't. There's a lot of places I don't give money to anymore because of it. But the 22 a day foundation and the Valhalla Project, 90% of the money they make goes right back in to go into protect to help veterans. Hey, Robert Miller's in the house. What's up, Sentinel? What's up, brother? How you doing, brother? So, folks, reach out to those that in uniform, and like I said, the text you send them, even if it's like the occasional text I'll send Doc at 2:00 in the morning. Hey, fucker, are you awake? Or Robert Miller, him and I will randomly text each other at weird intervals. It might be 3:00 in the morning, and I get just a weird meme from him, and I'll just start cracking up. Reach out to your friends that have been on the line, and that includes first responders. Reach out to those that have been on the line, because the things that they've seen, the things that these folks have had to deal with, most human minds can't grasp how bad some of those truly are. So keep them in your thoughts and prayers. And again, remember the folks that paid the ultimate sacrifice this weekend. And and if you're in a graveyard and you see coins on the gravestone, there's a reason for that. I've got a chart on my Facebook page. You guys can check and see. I'm not going to go down what every coin means, but each one represents something else. And a quarter means they were there when they died. That's a big one. If you see a quarter, that's huge. I was gonna lost my train of thought. But again, folks, everything, all our gratitude, all our hearts and prayers go out to those men and women in uniform that have not only paid the ultimate sacrifice, but continue to pay the ultimate sacrifice to keep us safe in our beds at night. Hope you guys have a
they not-
wonderful weekend. What's that?
So had they not done their sacrifice, we wouldn't have the luxury of sitting at lakeside with an adult beverage.
Exactly. And I know, Robbie and Steve said they never served, but they're both first responders. So in my opinion, yes, they have. I'm an Army vet, but I'm also, 20 plus years in law enforcement. I saw more crap as a cop than I did in uniform.
That is a true statement.
These folks that put on a uniform and put it on the line, they deserve our love and our respect, because they, and I'm not saying, and I'm not going to get into the argument about good cops versus bad cops. Nobody hates a bad cop worse than a good cop. I'm not even going to go and get into that now. But there are millions of folks out there putting their ass on the line, doing a damn good job every day, and don't get the appreciation they deserve. And that's everybody, every first responder, every medical personnel, every cop, every firefighter, every security officer, every corrections officer, every soldier, airman, sailor, and Marine. Every one of them, they deserve our respect and our gratitude. So thank you guys for being with us tonight. We had a great time talking about the gray men of the Cairngorms. And this is a really interesting subject, and I'm sure we're going to get back to it more at some point. I have to double check with my boss, meaning the wife. We might not have a show on Wednesday night. I know she was talking about wanting to go out of town on Wednesday. So I will make an announcement in the next day or two when she's decided what she wants to do. But we may not have a show on Wednesday. But if we don't, we'll be back next Saturday. Just like the usual. But folks, thank you guys so much for being with us. Reach out to those that that are in uniform. Let them know you're thinking about them. And Robbie, Steve, thank you both for what you guys do. Thank you guys so much. Nothing but love and respect for the men and women in uniform. So, folks, enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. Have an extra one. But when you go to a restaurant and you see that empty plate that's set, that empty spot at a table that's set for those who didn't make it, just show a little respect and understand that that's why that restaurant is showing the respect for those who didn't make it home, those who couldn't be there.
That drink that's poured out.
Yeah.
I was in a restaurant on Memorial Day, and they had set a plate, and they poured a beer into a pint and just set it there. And it was so telling, it's I would hope that when I meet my end, whatever it is, that somebody will pour one after me,
Plus, you got to tune in Wednesday anyway. Oh, I know you will.
Of course he will.
Folks, big shout out and thank you to the moderators. They do an awesome job. We've got a fantastic group of moderators. So guys, you guys do a fantastic job. Thank you guys so much. We have a ball doing this show, and we really enjoy hanging out with you guys. We don't have fans, we have friends. And again, there are no experts in this field. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. What we share with you guys is our theories, our opinions, and that's just what they are. We're not presenting them as rock solid, cut in stone. This is the way it is. And anybody, again, that's saying that is absolutely wrong, because nobody's got all the answers. And it's together sharing our experiences and learning from each other that's how we'll solve more of what these cryptids really are. So thank you guys so much for sharing your experiences with us, sharing your time with us, spending your Saturday evening with us. We had an awesome time tonight. Don't forget to check out our affiliates. That's Scallywag Tactical, Dark Angel Medical, and Brock Blades. Scallywagtactical.com, darkangelmedical.com, brockblades.com. And don't forget to use the discount codes, or if in Brock's case, just to let him know that we sent you. So again, thank you guys. We had an awesome time. We can't wait to do it again. And you guys are the absolute best. Thank you guys for being part of #DAX Machination. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DAX Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.